Good evening, everyone. At 6 p.m, and I declare this agenda forum open. I welcome everyone in the public gallery, those watching on live stream, all staff, councillors and members of the media. I'd like to start by saying Kaya Wanju Mali Budja. The City of Swan acknowledges the traditional custodians of this region, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and their descendants. Item 2 is the disclaimer. Agenda forums are specifically for agenda items which are to be considered by Council at the next ordinary meeting of Council. Agenda forums are not decision-making forums. They provide an opportunity for councillors to be equally informed or to seek additional information on matters prior to the presentation of such matters to the next ordinary meeting of Council for formal consideration and decision. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed. The recording will also be archived and made available on Council's website after this meeting. If you choose to participate in the meeting during public question time and deputation time, it is assumed your consent is given for the audio to be recorded. Please keep your comments respectful to the Council and other members of the community. Visual images of the public will not be captured. Item 3, attendance and apologies. I've received a late apology from Councillor Predovnik, and Councillor Howard is running late. She has another event to attend to and she hopes to be here around 7 p.m. All other councillors are present. Item 4, declarations. Declarations of financial and proximity interest or interests affecting impartiality. Do we have any, Mr CEO?
Yeah, Mr Mayor, we have a few. The first one is from Councillor Congerton. It's in relation to item 4.4 on the agenda, the Responsible Authority Report for Industrial and Warehouse Development, Lot 13, number 38, Crocker Drive, Malaga, DA 893 of 21. That interest is an interest of impartiality, as Dynamic Planning have acted on behalf of one of my companies in the past. Also from Councillor Congerton, item on the agenda is item 4.6, the Responsible Authority Report Industrial Development Lot 193, number 29, Dennyup Way, Malaga. That's DA 695 of 21. That is an interest of impartiality, as Dynamic Planning have acted on behalf of one of my companies in the past. Also, a declaration of interest from Councillor Johnson. It's in relation to item 413, which is the proposed modification of development approval DA 414 of 19 for the aged care facility use not listed, lot 44, number 30, Swan Street, East Guildford, DA 414-19F, and that is a proximity interest, as the reason I live at 29 Swan Street, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any others from the floor? Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. I've got 5.4 and 5.6, and their impartialities only because I'm a member of the catchment group that actually made a submission.
Can you fill the appropriate form out and hand them in? And Councillor Bowman, thank you.
Mr Mayor, I have an impartiality interest in item 3.3, as I live in the Vine suburb.
Thank you. If you make sure you fill the appropriate form out and pass it to the front when you're ready, thank you. Item 5, public question time. Questions relating to the reports contained in the agenda. Item 5.1, questions of which due notice has been given. Is Kelly Ovens in the audience? Have you seen the answers to your questions, Miss Ovens?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Question 1. I don't know if there's another copy out there so you can read it, but in answer to question 1, which is the acquisition of a lot at 26 Junction Parade, it was purchased in 1989, and as the owner of the property, what do the city intend the future use of the property would be? And the answer to that question is, as the records currently date back to 2005, the city will have to undertake further research in respect of that acquisition. In relation to questions 2 to 4, they're all answered, and I'll just read the answer out if you're happy with that. So the answer to question 2 is lot 218, 22 the Junction Parade, Midland, formerly number 2 the Avenue. It was acquired for part of a future multi-deck car park. Answer to question 3 is Lot 2, number 25, the Junction Parade, formerly number 5, the Avenue, was acquired for strategic importance aligned to the draft 2015 Midland Oval Master Plan. And answer number 4 is Lot 1, number 27, Junction Parade, formerly number 7, the Avenue, was acquired for strategic importance aligned to the draft 2015 Midland Oval Master Plan. So thank you for those questions. That moves to item 5.2, questions without notice. Any members of the gallery wish to ask any questions relating to the agenda? Thank you. Being no further questions, we'll move to the next item. Item 6, reports and motions which previous notice has been given, and 6.1, deputations. In accordance with the current procedures for public participation at agenda forums, all requests for in-person deputations and submissions for written deputations were required by 3 p.m. Tuesday, the 7th of December. All written deputations received by 4 p.m. Tuesday, the 7th of December, were circulated with a preliminary agenda on Tuesday evening. Requests for in-person deputations and written deputations received after 3 p.m. Tuesday, the 7th of December, identified in blue text in our agenda sheet, councillors, and are included in this final version. Part A, there were nil. And before I go into Part B, I've been requested by Councillor Kiley to make a short statement, which I'm happy to do. And it's from the Roadwise Committee and the Red Ribbon Day for Road Safety, so the 2021 campaign update. From Sunday the 21st of November, World Day of Remembrance for Road Traffic Victims, until Friday the 7th of January 2022, Welga's Roadwise encourages all members of the Road Safety Network to think about how road trauma has impacted their communities and what part they can play in making our roads safe, particularly with the festive season coming up. And thank you to Councillor Kiley for providing each councillor with the white ribbon with the dotted line indicating road safety. Thank you, Councillor Kiley. Moving on to Part B, item 3.1, Bellevue East Land Use Study. It's on page 83 of the agenda, councillors, and it's an in-person deputation from Mr Mark Richards. Thank you, Mr Richards. When you come to the podium, if you can turn the microphone on when the red light appears. When you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes for your deputation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the City staff for working in collaboration with the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association, discussing the progression of the Bellevue East Land Use Study, BELLUS recommendations. For the new councillors who are unfamiliar with the background of BELLUS, the Bellevue Residents and Ratepayers Association, BRA, support BELLUS. Our association has worked tirelessly on the issue since 2003. As the result of an extensive community consultation between BRA and the City of Swan, Council adopted BELLUS in 2013. Bellevue has endured significant issues as the result of its 100-year industrial history, leaving a legacy of general industrial zonings. There has been an Omex oil refinery contamination, industrial noise, waste control fire, sandblasting silicate fines and hydrocarbon fumes, transport depot and more. These problems created division and concerns for health in Bellevue community. The sale of Goodchild Oval enabled this study to occur without cost to other ratepayers. Thrust of document is to provide compatible land uses, final certainty to landowners and improved amenity for residents. Some 8 years after BELLUS was adopted, BRA still supports BELLUS. Tonight, I'm here to convey BRA's support of this agenda item, with one exception, and that is where the provision that Precinct 1.4 prepare and implement a verge landscape plan for Bellevue Road has a status of complete. No trees have been planted adjacent to any industrial use on Bellevue Road, where there is industrial on the opposite side. Therefore, we can only support a status of in progress. I thank you for your time to address Council.
Thank you, Mr Richards. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Kiley.
The report mentions 133 trees. What is the status of those trees?
There has been 133 trees planted, but we had a master plan originally for the whole of the suburb, and we're probably a little bit disappointed that there weren't a lot more trees planted in the Bellevue area. But with regards to Bellevue Road, it was supposed to be a screening for the residential, the residents living opposite the industrial zoning there, the industrial facilities.
You Mayor, so you're saying there's not enough, there should be more trees planted?
Oh, well, there should have been. The whole process was, in my opinion, a little flawed. In fact, we thought it was, trees were going to be planted on verges, whereas there was a public consultation. If people didn't get back to the City of Swan, no trees were planted, rather than the other way around.
And how many more trees are you expecting, roughly? Just a rough estimate.
That's all we've been allocated for now. But Helen Street still has ongoing trees to be planted. But as far as the city are concerned, the planting's finished in Bellevue, with a few exceptions.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parry.
Mr Mayor, considering Mr Richards is doing C1.5 and there's 13 more deputations, can I ask him to commence C1.5 or put to council, please?
Okay. Had a request from Councillor Parry that Mr Richards, while he's at the podium, give his next deputation on C1.5 rather than wait another 13 people coming up. Is there any objection to that?
It's very quick.
Thank you, Mr Richards. Please continue. And item C1.5 is on page 963 of the agenda. Thank you, councillors.
Mr Mayor, thank you for Councillor Sarah Howlett submitting this motion. The BRA look forward to utilising the bricks within the suburb. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad Councillor Parry brought that to my attention. So
well done. Thank you.
Thank you for your attendance, Mr Richards.
Thank you.
No questions, councillors? I'm sure Councillor Howlett thanks you as well. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, councillors. It's item 3.5, Reconciliation Action Plan. It's on page 130, and I have an in-person deputation from Mr John Considine. Thank you, Mr Considine. You'll have 5 minutes. If you can turn the microphone on when you're ready. I have the same problem sometimes. So if you just push the speak button, thank you, John. And you'll have 5 minutes from when you commence. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr Mayor, councillors, staff. I'm speaking today in support of the motion in item 3.5 of the agenda for the 15th of December 2021 that the council resolve to adopt the draft City Swan Reconciliation Action Plan, Innovate RAP, December 2031, December 2033, and authorise the CEO to approve any minor changes. In the document, the CEO noted the City looks forward to working alongside First Nations people and wider community to strengthen community relationships, create a culture of respect, and empower our organisation to improve work practices promoting equity and opportunity for all. You, councillors, have a duty of care to uphold that statement. I ask you to reflect on it. You've also a duty of care to uphold the City of Swan's strategic community plan with respect to the natural environment. And your Vision 2031, natural environment and community consultation. I'm speaking with respect of the Lloyd Street Bridge here. This bridge is your bridge, councillors. You're required to consult with the community you represent. You're required, we shouldn't have come to you. You should have come to us. The Greater Connect Alliance held a consultation, does not relieve you of that responsibility, nor indeed of the responsibility to consult with your local Aboriginal community, which is the topic of that action plan. They are part of your City of Swan community, your community, my community. Mr Mayor, the statement you gave when you stood up at the previous council meeting to exert your authority and was misjudged in my view. It was replete with fear-mongering and unsubstantiated statements that have no place in a council debate, and especially surprising from a person who comes from an evidence-based career as a policeman.
Well, just
I expected
I'll just
better.
ask you to stop there. Thank you, Mr Considine. At the beginning of the meeting, I asked you, all people, not to make any disrespectful comments to any councillor or other members of the committee. You're approaching that line. As you said, that was your opinion. So if you've got more of your statement to make, you can continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are no costings. There is no evidence of change that will cause a cost blowout of millions of dollars. There is no evidence of a threat to funding. There is no plan. We don't accept these opinions, and I submit neither should your councillors. Mr Mayor, I began writing this sort of submission you would anticipate from a botanist and one of the longest-serving directors in the history of Kings Park and Botanic Gardens. I now intend to speak to you, Mayor Lucas, and to challenge you to adhere to your values and aspirations as evident in your career and in this document. A document that you have signed and which I think genuinely you believe. I've discarded my earlier essay in favour of one from an ordinary citizen, a ratepayer. My challenge is to you is to set an example to your council, for your citizens and indeed for your municipality. I'm told you aspire to build bridges, not physical bridges, but bridges between people. This Reconciliation Action Plan gives you that opportunity. When Councillor Catalano's motion is put, Mayor Lucas, you should stand. Ask your council for permission to speak as chairman and pass the chairmanship to your deputy, and speak ardently in favour of the opportunity her motion provides to give substance to building bridges between communities, as argued for in your reconciliation plan, the plan you have signed. That plan, so this will enable a practical, substance-based opportunity to treat Midland City Council's Aboriginal community with dignity
30 seconds left, thank you.
and with respect. Will you argue for a bridge that is their bridge and our bridge? Councillor, there is no threat to funding for the bridge. I understand it's a Commonwealth State grant now controlled by the state government. Councillors, when you vote on this resolution, think, how can I help make this resolution action plan something more than just a document, more than just a resolution, more than just signage? Please pause the bridge. Give those members of our community who are Aboriginal a chance to contribute to a solution that works for their culture and for ours.
Thank you, Mr Considine.
Working
It's your
together
5
for
minutes.
solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Just in response, we have not yet adopted our Reconciliation Action Plan. I'm hoping that will be adopted next week, as you mentioned. And it was not the city's process that did the consultation. It was the state government through the Main Roads Department and their contractors, the Greater Alliance. So I thank you for your deputation. Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, we'll go. What's your question, Councillor Catalano?
My question is that did you suggest that the city could have consulted with Aboriginal people and not left it up to Greater Connect?
Did more than suggest. I stated that it is the city's duty. It's your bridge. It's for you to consult.
Thank you.
The question. And do you think that that would be in keeping with the Reconciliation Action Plan?
Absolutely. It talks for working together.
Thank you, Mr Considine. No more questions, councillors. Then we move to item 4.1, consideration of submissions, amendment number 190, local planning scheme number 17 to reclassify land on Diana Crescent and Kerwin Way, Lockridge from local reserve, recreation to public purposes, water corporation and special use. It's on page 168 of your agenda, and we have an in-person deputation from Mr Richard Carroll, and I believe Councillor Catalano, you want to present a petition. Thank you. If you can stand up, read out the...
Thank you for that. Yes, the petition I have before me is from... these are the electors of the City of Swan. Request that Council not change the zoning of the land above Rocher Oval in Lockridge in the proposed amendment to the local planning scheme number 17 from recreational to special purposes. They're not against old age development, the petitioners, but they don't think that recreational land should be used for building on. And they prefer to keep it for the people and their natural environment. So there's 149 signatures on the petition.
Thank you. Pass that forward. And I'll now call Mr. Richard Carroll to the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Carroll. You'll have 5 minutes from when you start talking.
Thank you. My name is Richard Carroll. I live on Jennings Way. I object to the rezoning proposal as it is currently written. I speak to concerns that are shared by many of the local residents. For the location and size of the site, the size of the potential aged care facility is massive. As the proposal is currently worded, the facility may be 2 stories high as viewed from Kerwin Way, but when you incorporate the slope down from Kerwin Way to Rocher Park, this allows for up to 4 stories high as viewed from Rocher Park. As the proposal is currently worded, the build area may be 55% of the land area and the remaining 45% of the land area may be car parking. As the proposal is currently worded, currently we have a massive, ugly monstrosity. In the review report released on Friday, it is inadequate that the City of Swan consistently refer to the upcoming local development plan, landscape management plan, etc., to fix bulk of to fix the bulk of issues that have been raised. You're effectively saying, don't worry about it, we'll legislate for a monstrosity now and fix it later. If we care, then we will fix it now. There is no trust in we'll fix it later. It follows that there will be a correlation between the number of aged care residents and the size of the facility. For 2 stories high in Kerwin, 4 stories on Rocher Park, 55% build area, there will be 200, 300, 400 aged care residents. It follows there will be a correlation between the number of aged care residents and the number of nurses, orderlies, doctors, physios, cleaners, cooking staff, admin, delivery people, food trucks, etc., etc. This is a 24-hour facility. There will be 10 times the amount of traffic that currently enters and exits Kerwin Way. For the applicant to respond to traffic concerns with there may be a slight increase in local traffic is an insult. Kerwin Way will lose its quiet feel and replace the feel with that of a place of work, people consistently driving in and out of a large workplace that employs numerous staff to run it 24 hours a day. Lockridge provides affordable housing for young families. Young families purchased houses in this street on the basis that it is a quiet street. Many kids are walking through Kerwin Way. It is also a path through to the school. When minor traffic was directed past the Lockridge Primary School due to the closure of Lord Street, a kid was hit by a car the very next day. There are 4 right-angle turns in the Kerwin Way loop. This makes for very limited visibility to see the approach of vehicles in most areas of Kerwin Way when crossing the road. My sister-in-law was one who bought an affordable house in Kerwin Way on the basis of a quiet street. She has an autistic son. Road safety is an issue. To limit the clear traffic impact and associated quiet enjoyment of the living environment on a quiet, closed loop that is Kerwin Way, 2 things need to happen. The size of the possible development needs to be reduced to reduce the potential number of residents and so reduce the associated staff and traffic. This can be achieved by a reduction in the height or the build area. To limit the height would be more appropriate because it would be great to not have to walk under a 4-storey tower when we are walking along Rocher Park. The second thing that needs to happen is that the main or sole access to the site needs to be Diana Crescent. This road is already a more major access thoroughfare.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
The impact to the nature of this road will be far, far less significant than to Kerwin Way. There will also be, because of the size of the area and the push of the boundary into Rocher Park, there will be loss of the simultaneous use of the current functioning of Rocher Park. Sorry, I'm now rushing. There are also noise and lighting impacts that are real concerns for the continued use of the Oval's current functions. These were dismissed in the review that was put out on Friday, and it was just put that the laws will not change and the laws are the same for everyone. But I say to you, if your source of light and noise is here and you live here, there may not be a problem. But if you live this close to the source, then yes, complaints and the change to the current use due to complaints, shutting down those functions are a real possibility, and they should be considered.
Thank you,
I also
Mr.
put
Carroll.
forward.
That's your 5 minutes.
Okay.
How long have you got to go? How long have you got to...
I just want to put forward also that the pedestrian access between Kerwin Way and Rocher Park should be there rather than a suggested investigation. It should be put. These impacts to the local community can be lessened at the wording of this rezoning, and the community deserve that.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Carroll. This is about rezoning, a change in zoning.
Yes.
What do you actually think about the change from recreation to special purpose?
I understand your complete objection, and I would love for that to happen. But as I understand politically, that seems to be a very difficult fight. So I'm putting my efforts to the fight that if this rezoning is going to come about, no matter what objection the community have, then I want the impact on the community to be lessened, and that can be done.
Sorry, so you're looking
But
for...
if I had my way, yeah, I wouldn't rezone it.
So, number one, you don't want to rezone it, but if it has to be rezoned, you want the height reduced, correct?
That's one of the
And
major
the
changes.
access way kept, and what was the other thing you...
Access has got to be from Diana Crescent.
Oh, access from Diana Crescent.
Kerwin Way is a quiet, closed-off loop.
Yep.
That no cars run that street, and there's just going to be...
Great.
There's going to be a ton.
What do you think about traffic going on to Diana Crescent from there? Do you think Diana Crescent's too busy to handle that kind of traffic?
Well, it's only by comparison to Kerwin Way.
Yeah.
It is far more.
Yeah,
it is far
exactly.
more appropriate.
Yeah,
I think
exactly. Yeah.
It depends the size of the facility. At the size of the facility as it potentially could be,
Gotcha.
it's too much from any access way. But there's more potential from Diana Crescent.
And one final question: what would you prefer the height to be if there was an opportunity to have, if it was approved with a height reduction? What do you think the height should be?
1 story visually from Kerwin Way. That would still allow multi-story from the Rocher Park side.
So, like 2 stories from Rocher Park.
Yeah, 2 or. Yeah, that would be 2 from
Okay.
Rocher Park.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Cheers.
Yeah,
Any other
thank you.
questions, councillors? I thank you for your deputation, Mr Carroll. The next in-person deputation is Mr Ron Carey on behalf of the Swan Community Care Service Advisory Committee. Thank you, Mr Carey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Please note that I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of the members of the City of Swan Community Care Services Committee. Some of you will know that we have been strong advocates to see new residential aged care facilities built in the City of Swan for the last 6 or 7 years. We've been lobbying state and federal and local government officials for all that time, and in fact we have accumulated probably 6 or 7 lever arch files of written communication between those parties and other people, including registered aged care providers. The site in Lockridge is just but one of the sites that we've been advocating for over those years. In the first instance, we've always believed that it's best for people to remain in their own homes for as long as possible to age in place. We agreed that it's the most humane and cost-effective way of delivering much-needed health services to aged and frail-aged people. However, ageing in place and providing in-home care services will never be a substitute for full-time residential aged care when and where it is needed. Some of you will recall the findings of a study commissioned by the City back in 2015, which, among other things, found that 1,050 new residential aged care places will be needed in the City of Swan alone by 2036. That in effect equates to 10.5 new 100-bed facilities. A 100-bed aged care facility is considered by the industry as being the most viable. It doesn't have to be any bigger, but it probably should not or could not be any smaller to be viable. As mentioned in our submission to the proposed scheme lodged by the City of Swan on the 4th of October 2021, there are currently 630 residential aged care places in the City of Swan, in the 7 residential facilities that currently exist. There are waiting lists for every one of those facilities. The last residential aged care facility built in the City of Swan was Aegis Hermitage in Ellenbrook, and that was opened 10 years ago, for God's sake, in August 2011. Fortunately for us, for all of us, especially our ageing community, Masonic Care WA are building a new 120-bed facility in Middle Swan, which should open in late 2022, early 23. We welcome that on behalf of our ageing community. As of 2017, there were 3,650 residential aged care places in Western Australia. We have in writing from Roger Cook, the Health Minister, MLA, that confirms that number, and we don't disagree with that. There is no escaping from the fact that there's a shortage of residential aged care places in the City of Swan and the East Metropolitan region, and indeed across the state of Western Australia. We know that the population of the City of Swan will double by the year 2036, and leading up to the date, there will be many more people reaching the age of 65 to 85 years and above. And 85 years is when some elderly people will require a place in an aged care facility. By the year 2036, there will be 69,000 people in WA living with dementia or some other form of cognitive condition. The City of Swan, if you didn't know, is in the top 10 LGAs in Western Australia for people living with dementia. By 2031, there will be 850,000 people in Australia living with dementia. 1,000 people in Australia turn 85 years each week. I'm going to move down the page a little bit, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, 1 minute left, thank you.
We also noticed that we note that the state government agencies were all given the opportunity to comment, but have not found any real issues that cannot be overcome should a formal development application be lodged in the future. The decision for elected members at the agenda forum, and more importantly at the ordinary meeting to be held next Wednesday evening, the 15th of December, is relatively straightforward in our view. The decision to be made on that night only allows the land to be rezoned to enable a new residential aged care facility to be built, nothing more, nothing less. All considerations can and decisions can and will be dealt with if and when, 1, the Department of Communities can attract a buyer for the site, and 2, if and when a formal development application is lodged with the City of Swan to build a new facility. In closing, we trust that you will see the benefits in improving the scheme amendment so the State Planning Commission and the Hon Minister for Planning can consider and hopefully approve the application, thereby allowing the Department of Communities to call for expressions of interest from registered aged care providers to invest in this site. We trust that you will approve this subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, I thank you for your deputation, Mr Carey, and councillors. There was a copy of Mr Carey's deputation on the paperwork provided you tonight. That takes us to the next item, item 4.3, proposed amendment number 1 to the Brabham Activities Centre Structure Plan, Lot 2 and 3 Marble Entrance and parts of Walcott Avenue and Everglades Avenue, Brabham. It's on page 292 of your agenda, and we have Mr Damien Shepherd from Stocklands to make an in-person deputation. Thank you, Mr Shepherd. You have 5 minutes if you need it.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So my name's Damien Shepherd. I'm a regional manager within the Stockland business. So as discussed, I make this deputation in respect of agenda item 4.3, which is an amendment to the Brabham Activities Centre Plan. So Stockland is the developer of Whiteman Edge Estate, within which the Activity Centre is located. So Stockland is pleased to advise that we support the officer's recommendation on the amendment, and we have a few key points to make, and then I welcome any questions. So firstly, just touching on the intent. So the intent of the amendment is primarily a redistribution of land uses within the town centre. So all of the existing uses remain and essentially unchanged in scale, aside from the residential, which actually sees a reduction. So importantly, the amendment retains the ability for the centre to grow to the same size with the same amount of net lettable area. There'll still be a district community centre, and there'll be less residential, as highlighted in the report, given the reduction in density from an R100 coding to an R60 to an R80. Secondly, just touching on the driver for the change or the amendment, and that was primarily twofold. So firstly, it was about achieving a better design outcome. So the reduced retail land area allows us to create a better retail centre with a higher concentration of energy on a smaller site footprint, essentially, as opposed to a larger single-storey centre dispersed over a larger site area. And that approach was supported by a review of a whole bunch of comparable district centres across Perth and the appropriate site area that they sit on. And then the second part of that was about providing a more appropriate form of residential, being the more traditional R60 to R80, as opposed to the high-density R100, which is essentially apartments, and given everything that we know today, we don't believe is appropriate or feasible in Brabham, or more particularly, I suppose, in this location within Brabham. We've got a really long and proud history with the city, and that's built on 10 years of what we've delivered at Whiteman Edge Estate in Brabham, but also Vale in Averley. And these are two of our most successful projects in WA, but also across the country. We continue to invest heavily in the city. We're extremely committed to a long relationship with the city, and given that, we're acutely aware and understand that our licence to operate is built from the quality of the outcomes that we continue to deliver, and that's an approach that we're absolutely taking within the Brabham Activity Centre. So thank you for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson first.
Thank you for the presentation. As you're aware, there has been concern from councillors about the increased densities, and seeing a reduction is welcomed. Have you, as a part of the reduction in size of the overall density, have you done anything to increase the number of tree plantings to make up for what is seen to be quite a barren area?
It's something that we can absolutely look at as we progress through the subsequent layers of planning, I suppose. We've had a real focus on tree retention within Whiteman Edge today, particularly within that town centre. And if you know the site, you'll be aware we've had a huge focus on I think it's Yildeen Road and Everglades and the mature tree retention there, and then also the parks around there and the entry, and also within Jungle Park. But it's something that we can continue to focus on through the subsequent layers of planning, absolutely.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Damien. I'm just concerned about the public open space. Now, I can't see on the plan before where there was 0.2 hectares of public open space. And also, staff are not supportive of this. I just wondered why that was. This is changing, and people have concerns about that
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, absolutely. So I think essentially it's about looking at the amount of public open space within the Whiteman Edge area in its entirety, and that's absolutely meets the requirement of the 10% public open space. I think the amount of public open space that was shown within the residential, the view was the size of it is not necessary. It wasn't proven at that point that it was required for drainage. So the recommendation was to delete it if it's not necessary for drainage.
Any other questions, Councillor Catalano?
So you've actually taken out that public open space then that is referred to. That was on the recommendations of staff, was it?
That is the recommendation in the report, as I understand it.
And that's why it's not is not included in the map. The 0.2 hectare.
Sorry, Alex is our town planners here. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reference in there to this sort of drainage area.
Yeah. That's
and I just don't see it on the map. I think that's what Councillor Knight was talking about as well, referring to.
Yeah,
and I can't see it on the map. And I still notice that in the report, the staff report, they said that they didn't support it. And I'm thinking, well, what is it that they don't support? Because it's not clear.
There's a couple of plans in there, so I think from what I can see...
I've got this one, which is, I think this is the one that you're actually...
so that's the statutory plan. There's a development concept plan contained within part 2 of the report there, which should be... may actually not have been part of the agenda, as a matter of fact. So there's a development concept plan in part 2 of the report, which identifies where that 0.2 hectares of POS is located.
Given that we haven't got that, where is this public open space located?
It's located in the residential precinct, so the yellow in front of you, quite central to that. So
and what sort of side of the residential precinct? Is it the north of Mayfield?
South of Mayfield.
South of Mayfield, and it's in that R6080 block?
Yeah, and it would be created as part of the subdivision process.
And what is it, in the centre, on the edge?
Yeah, basically central. Yeah, basically central.
It's in the centre of that?
Essentially, yeah.
Behind the sort of houses, is it?
There'd be houses facing onto it was the intention.
Oh, so in that R6080 area, the houses are going to be looking inward to this little bit of public open space, is that correct?
Some of them will, yeah. That was the intention. The staff have indicated that size POS is not supported, so we'll have to obviously reconsider our design for that part of the residential precinct, which is okay. That's very doable.
Well, it's just not very clear as to what it is that you're proposing, because this map doesn't have that, and then we've got this recommendation, and we don't even know what we're being recommended to not approve.
Yeah,
so.
I believe the agenda only contains part 1 of the structure of the activity centre plan, which is the statutory kind of important part, I suppose, or the more important part. There's also a part 2, which is the explanatory report, which I don't believe has made it onto the agenda. I'm not privy to the reasons for that, but
perhaps, Councillor Catalano, we can have that documentation provided before next week's ordinary council meeting by planning staff.
Yes, would that be possible? Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks to clear that up then. Okay. Cool. I mean, maybe that's an opportunity to get some of these trees in that Councillor Henderson was talking about, that public open space area. Would it be a potential for that?
Potential. I mean, it's only relatively small in size anyway, so that does have limitations, and it's in an area that has already been earthworked, so there's no existing trees to retain. It would be all planted.
But it's going to be like a little kind of sump, I imagine, so there would be potential for trees to be planted in there.
Yeah, it'll be a pocket park with a swale.
Yeah, and would there be potential for trees to be planted in there?
Absolutely. Yeah, appropriate size trees. The recommendation is for it to be taken out. But,
and with the trees at the front of the properties, I mean, on the street verges, I mean, is there any opportunity? I mean, how far are these properties going to be actually from the footpath?
So the setbacks will be guided by the R codes. As normal, there'll be street trees within the road reserve, and that's a detail that doesn't appear on that plan, basically because the purpose of the plan there is to identify broad zones or land uses. Obviously, as Damien mentioned, there's landscape planning that occurs at the subdivision stage, subsequent to this stage, which is where
I understand that.
Street trees and
but
so
I mean,
forth.
we need to be thinking about these trees like now. I mean, we can't keep kicking it down the road, because what happens is they don't get put in, and we've got then buildings that are right up effectively to the pavement. We've got no room on the pavement to put a tree. We've got no room in the middle of the road to put a tree. And in fact, what happens is these suburbs don't get one. So I was just thinking,
If you've got a question, Councillor Catalano, rather than making statements, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Kyler, you are next.
Thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, I haven't seen so many objections to a proposal that have come before council for a long time. I mean, this is an inordinate amount of objections to the proposal. There's pages after pages. One person said that they moved to the area on the basis that shopping centre development would provide future employment for them, and they see that opportunity falling away if this goes ahead. If you had the opportunity to talk to these people here in front of you now, and some may be listening online, to all these objectors, and obviously you've had a chance to look at those, what would you say to them?
Yeah, look, I think my primary objective would be to clarify any misunderstanding. I think when you review the objectives, that's what's evident to me, is there is an element of misunderstanding within that, because I think the main sort of categorisation of that is one is a loss of retail or shops, but that's absolutely not the case. There was absolutely still the ability for the centre to grow to the size that we've always expected of that. The other was about more residential, and absolutely there's not more residential, and I think that's quite clearly articulated within the council report. One of the other factors was about traffic, and I also believe that's about a misunderstanding as well, about there being more residential creating more traffic. But given there's actually the retail stays the same and there's less residential, there will be no adverse impact on traffic.
And one of the others was the district community centre, which appears to have appeared to some submitters to have been deleted. At the time we submitted the amendment, we were in discussions with the city about the precise layout of that site. So the line work for that lot will now be added back to the ACP as a result of those discussions having been completed. So there's no change there either.
So I think there was a lot of fear that there was a loss of amenity and more density, but that's absolutely not the case.
Will there be less opportunity for commercial development?
No. It still protects the ability for the centre to grow to 20,000 square metres and of net lettable area.
And did you have community consultation on site in the area prior to lodging this submission?
No, it's a good question, and no, we didn't, and maybe naively we didn't expect it to be controversial because of what we just said, that we weren't changing the scale of anything, but I think that misunderstanding that has eventuated, maybe we could have done some things differently there.
Thank you.
Councillor Catalano?
I just don't understand how the amount of commercial can be affected if actually quite a lot of commercial land is being taken away.
So it's the ability for the centre to grow up. So rather than a large one-dimensional single-level centre, there's the ability for the centre to grow upwards. So multi-storey, I suppose, sorry.
Okay. So in fact, the density will increase quite considerably in that area, really, because it's all going to go up.
So by density, do you mean bulk and scale?
Yes.
So the amount of floor space remained the same. The bulk and scale, I mean, there's always the ability under the existing ACP for the centre to go multi-storey anyway, even with apartments on top at the moment. That could be done under the existing ACP. So the proposed amendment proposes a height limit on that at 12 metres with appropriate setbacks. So our belief is under the amended ACP, the city has better design controls on the built form outcome than it does under the existing.
Are you talking about this particular one that we've got here?
Yes.
So with this particular proposal before us, is that you want to be able to have effectively higher commercial buildings? Is that what this is proposed in this?
So essentially, there was no height limit on the approved activity centre plan, but how we foresee the growth occurring is, as you say, on a smaller footprint and maybe going to multi-storey rather than a large horizontal one-storey.
Okay, so what kind of heights were you thinking of looking at?
So
I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we proposed one concept plan with multi-storey retail and some car parking. That is one theoretical way that the growth could occur. I think realistically what you'll see, and that was on the bit of vacant land that remains at the moment. I think realistically the growth will occur across the whole 7 hectares that remains in a multi-storey fashion. So I would expect it could grow to a couple of storeys in height.
2 storeys?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, yeah, interesting presentation, this. My question really is about the motivation for the change, because I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, if it's the same, only it's different, what's the purpose of the change? But I see here in the key issues, it's saying that the amendment is brought about due to the inability to sell housing products above R80 density coding. Are you saying that you can't sell small houses and flats? Is that the reason?
That is part of it, yes. So one is about we believe it's a better retail design outcome, and then the second part is it's a more appropriate form of residential. Okay. So the apartments we don't believe work in that, particularly in that part of Brabham. And I suppose the only thing I'd say is keep in mind that when the activity centre plan was originally done, the location of the Metronet station hadn't been confirmed at that point. So we were of the realistic view that there was a potential for the station to be north of Yildeen Road. The reality is, as at today, that station is south of Yildeen Road, so that has an impact on how we think that centre will could develop and the appropriate density in that location.
So it's the same number of residential properties, but they're going to be bigger residential properties, and to achieve that you've got to make the retail area smaller. Is that right?
That's right on the residential, and we believe the retail outcome is better.
Okay, thank you.
Any Councillor Kiley?
Yeah, just in reference to the drainage function of the public open space, Livable Neighbourhoods doesn't recognise drainage areas as public open space. It's got to be usable. How do you see that fitting in?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's a calculation, obviously, that applies under Livable Neighbourhoods.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, sorry. There's obviously a calculation that applies under Livable Neighbourhoods in respect of public open space and drainage. The view that the city and ourselves have come to post-lodgement is that POS is not strictly necessary for drainage. There's POS very close nearby outside of the ACP area within about 100 metres or so. So it probably won't end up being, just depending on the Commission's final decision, it probably won't end up being part of the concept. Any drainage component within that POS wouldn't count toward I suppose the calculated POS credit. Wouldn't, no.
Any other questions, councillors? Now, thank you for your deputation. That takes us to the next item, is item 4.7, State Administrative Tribunal, reconsideration proposed use of a portion of land for a gym and veterinary centre, including associated building and works, lot 23 Benara Road, Caversham. It's on page 459. We have Jason Hunt speaking. Mr Hunt, you've got 5 minutes. Thank you, if you need it.
Mr Mayor, councillors, staff, thank you very much. We're speaking in support of the officer's recommendation for the proposed recreation private and vet centre at lot 23 Benara Road, Caversham. This application was previously considered by the council, and at that time it was deferred with the reasons to allow further time for there to be discussion on the layout. This process has now occurred, and we would like to take the opportunity here to thank the city planners and Councillor Keeley, who were involved in that process, for their engagement. The plans that the council are now considering are the outcome of this process. This particular site has multiple factors that impact it. That includes Benara Road widening, which I note is an item that's being considered by this council at the meeting. Western Power 330 kVA lines, Bennett Brook, Parks and Recreation Reserve, and what's proposed is a way that can all work together, taking all of those into consideration. This site previously has had an approval for these land uses. That was in 2017. Unfortunately, due to factors that didn't get enacted, so that's expired, but we are now seeking approval for the same use. The proposal, just to sort of do a quick recap for the council, is for a section of the site that is vacant at the rear of the Better Pets and Gardens, and it would be a building that would be split into 2 sections. One of the units would be a gym, and for a maximum of 60 people, predominantly to operate in the early and late hours of the day, and the second unit would be for a veterinary centre, or a vet as it's defined under the city scheme. This would be for 4 laboratories, offices and consulting rooms for a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday area. The access way and parkings will all be sealed, curbed, lined, and that will incorporate a resolution of the parking in the existing Better Pets and Gardens. The drainage of the site already has an approval, and that drainage discharge will be maintained. That's approved at 79 litres per second, and there are plans in the package showing how that will be taken care of. Traffic will circulate around the site in a clockwise direction, and there's sweep paths shown in the plans. In conclusion, just to keep this brief for you, the proposed land uses are both D uses in the city's scheme, and we feel it'll be a nice complementary service to the area. I do also have here with me tonight one of the land's owned by a family trust, and one of the family members is here with me just in support of this, so I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley first.
Thanks, Jason, and thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Just in relation to the road widening, Benara Road upgrade, have you had a chance to look at the plans there for... you're familiar with how much land might be needed for that widening of the road and for the placement of the roundabout? Have you looked at that at all?
There's the MRS there's been an MRS amendment in place quite a number of years ago, and that details the road widening, and that has been taken into account on those plans that are prepared there. While that land is still in the ownership of Lot 23, there's a line that runs on a sort of diagonal slither down towards where the pylon is, and then comes back to about where Benara Road is now, just due to setbacks, and then tilts on a small angle as it heads towards the existing bridge. So, yes, that was aware of, and that was also accommodated within the plans. And I know that we've had earlier discussions about a potential crossover onto Benara Road, and it's through that process and the upcoming widening that was not anything that was supported by Commission, Main Roads and various parties.
Just a question to staff. Mayor, thank you.
I've got another question of the deputy, so I'll deal with that first and then come back to staff questions. Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The bulk and size seems quite big for this area, and I noticed that the landscaping is more than 10% purely because it's part of that lot is a park and recreational reserve, and I also think part of it is Bush Forever as well. I noticed in the report, in part of that park and recreation reserve, there's a 4 metre wide limestone track going in. The only reason I could see that is so you can get your bell down to 29, is that correct?
It was in consultation with the West Australian Planning Commission in regards to that, who consulted with the authority that have the management of that area, not this particular portion because it is still in private ownership, and that's in a management with Whiteman Park. And they were supportive of the limestone track for 2 reasons. One, for a fire mitigation for themselves on an ongoing, and also because the presentation of a Bush Forever site and this type of barrier stops weed infestation into that particular area. So it was a matter that again, with these intercrossing factors that did come into play.
And so because your natural landscaping is over 10% because part of a lot that you can't really use, it doesn't seem like you're providing much landscaping to the development. Is there opportunities to provide more landscaping? And I use the example, like, for example, you're going to put fake grass in. Can that not be natural vegetation?
It could be grass. But one of the challenges is that it needs to be managed in a low-threat state in terms of bushfire impacts. So it certainly, the discussions have been that if it was to be grass, then that could be a recommendation that could be made. Yeah. But if it was to be forest, that couldn't be.
Any other questions? Councillor Cole, you have a question for staff? I thank you for your deputation.
Okay. Thank you very much for your consideration of it.
My only comment would be, being my local garden centre, hopefully you'll be doing a good landscape plan around the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Well,
Councillor Cole, you've got a question to staff?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to staff, I'm just interested in the page 470 or page 471. Does this diagram or these diagrams show the area that might be taken up by the Benara Road upgrade of the roundabout at the corner of Lord Street and Benara Road? Has that been accounted for in this submission?
Through Mr Mayor, yes, the diagrams do show the extent of the reservation, although I accept the A4 printout might be a bit difficult to read.
So, while you're standing, Mr Russell, the slither of land on the corner of Benara and Lord Street, is that the area that will be taken back by the city? I'm not too sure of the exact. It's really hard to read the small print.
Through Mr Mayor, yes, the small print says extent of future road reserve.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Knight, you've got a question for staff?
Thank you. Yeah, just recommendation 13 on page 469. The development must be connected to the Water Corporation sewer where available. What? Could you clarify that, please?
Through Mr Mayor, if the sewer connection is in the adjoining road reserves and it's able to be connected to, the condition requires them to do so.
Any other questions, councillors? Then thank you. That takes us to the next item, and I welcome Councillor Howlett to the meeting. It's item 4.8, proposed temporary estate entry signs, lot 37 Orange Avenue, Upper Swan. It's on page 476 of the agenda, and Miss Kerry Rowe, chairperson of the Upper Swan District's Ratepayers and Residents Association, will be making a presentation in person. Thank you, Ms Rowe. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation if you need it.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors, council staff and visitors. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this item. My name is Kerry Rowe and I am the current chair of the Upper Swan District Ratepayers and Residents Association. We recognise the right of the developer to advertise Clementine Estate. However, we strongly believe that the signage must fit the aesthetics, ambience and rural amenities of the current area. This signage, which you have in front of you, does not do this. The proposed temporary estate signage at lot 37, number 67 Orange Avenue, is too elaborate, big, excessive, imposing and somewhat overwhelming. I'm sure we're all old enough and mature enough to know that size does matter and that big is not necessarily better. The developer has chosen not to sell the land on which the sign will be built, proving that the sign is far too large to be placed elsewhere. The signage is consistent with the character of an urban estate, rather than contributing to the interface with our existing community, a rural area. In addition, we do not believe there are any rural connotations in any element of the sign. The fact that they're using rustic recycled bricks is drawing a very long bow. The use of a citrus design for the entry is also confusing. We recognise it suits Clementine, however, there were never any commercial citrus orchards within this area. Rather, the Vignerons had some trees in their backyard. Surely a grape design would have been more in keeping. The fact that the design is by a landscape architect is totally irrelevant. Other areas in the City of Swan, such as Equus Lake, Woburn Park, have subtle signs that inform people of the location. And even a large sign at Ellenbrook is part of a retaining wall, overlooks commercial vehicles. It does not overlook local homes, mine. We do not agree that the local community will need signs to identify and to use to visit the parks and playgrounds that are being constructed. We locals watch them and hear them being built. We know exactly where they are. The developer is clutching at straws to justify such a huge sign. It is purely about sales. There's already ample Clementine advertising in Upper Swan. Railway Parade has a kilometre-long banner at fence height from the bridge at down the end, Railway Parade, all the way to Apple Street. There are huge flags flapping noisily day and night from 6 flagpoles within Clementine near this planned sign on Citrus Street. There are large signs on Apple Street, Orange Avenue. We are also aware that this sign is allegedly temporary, but we know how long it will be there because the development is going to be there for longer than 3 years. I live opposite the proposed sign. I know where I live. I question the use of lighting at night time from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock. I question the size. I question the need for such an unnecessarily large sign. We believe there was no problem with having a sign, but we would just like it the simpler and the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Of staff, any questions? Thank you, Councillor Bowman.
Kerry, the sign, if that was at the sales office, would that be something that was much more digestible from the residents?
Well, there's already a sign on the roof, Aaron. Yep. There's already huge signs, banners on the way in. So it wouldn't fit. To be quite honest, the sign of it and the existing sales office that is there, it would not fit.
So both the size and the location?
Yes.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley?
Through you, Mayor, I'm just trying to find where that time constraint is. What point can the time you said 6 till 10?
Yes.
Is that?
And it's on a time. They can extend the time if need be because it will be on a timer. So
I'm just
in
trying
winter,
to find that in the recommendation. I can't see it there. I wonder if staff could point that out. 481. Oh, it hasn't got it in the actual recommendation. That's all. I wondered if that would be a condition that has to be adhered to if it's not in the recommendation. Maybe that's a staff question.
All right, I've got one councillor before you for a staff question. Any other questions of Ms Rowe, please? Councillor Kiley?
Yeah. I can't help but feel the horse is bolted on this development, and that the expectation of potential buyers is that they want something quite flashy, and that might be the bone of your complaint here, is that it is quite flashy. But I can't help but feel that a new potential young family coming into the area wanting to buy into the area might want to see that. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
well, there are signs on every road. There are comments we're going to make later about the signs. There is no shortage of signs for them to know where they live. No shortage whatsoever. And we have been asked for our feedback, and that is what we are giving. I hope that the horse had never bolted, because I've got a whole lot of life left in me, and I'm not having been walked over like we're being walked over at the moment.
Okay, questions of staff. Councillor Henderson, you were first.
Thank you, Mayor. The footings for this are reinforced concrete, is that right? From what I can see, some very fine print.
Through you, Mr Mayor, page 485. Yes, usually standard footings are of concrete.
And that being the case, would that be considered to be something permanent?
Mr. Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, you could construe that as being, you'd have to dig it out and remove it.
So, but the application is for a temporary sign for 3 years. So, so the next question then is, what would we do when 3 years comes up? Are we going to see an extension, or would we enforce removal?
Through Mr Mayor, that'd be the discretion of council in 3 years' time if it's mindful to approve it now with such a requirement.
Okay. And in terms of visual amenity, what's a normal accepted sign size in a rural area?
Through Mr Mayor, there's no prescriptive standards around all of that, so it's a matter of discretion as to what's too large within the context of any landscape or area.
So I think we do have some limits around what we accept, so that's why I asked the question. So if there is no standard, then I guess the question is there a limit on size of signs in urban areas?
Through Mr Mayor, no, we only have standards with respect to what is exempted from requiring planning approval. Anything above that, you're generally looking at. Swan Valley used to have a 15 square metre area size, but other than that, we don't have too many prescriptive dimensions around signage.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowman, you're next.
If this was a sign advertising a different business, a different product for sale, because that's what it is, a product for sale, would they be allowed to have a sign this big?
Through Mr Mayor, that's at the discretion of the council.
And my next question is, why is it that the developers seem to be able to have these size signs? It seems to become a bit of a norm in local government that it's just accepted, and they seem to get bigger and bigger. There's some areas where they try and outdo each other. So is that just expected now, or they just seem to push a little bit further?
I couldn't speak for the developers, Mr Mayor, but look, I generally agree with Councillor Bowman's claims that it does seem to be the trend, and perhaps they are competing with each other to promote the saleability of their respective estates.
Thank you. Councillor Kiley.
Yeah, just to confirm, the actual width of the arc is 8.635, so 8.6 metres roughly. Is that what it reads? I'm having trouble reading that size print.
$6.35.
But it is just over 8, almost 9 metres wide. Is that correct?
That's generally correct, Mr Mayor.
And the other question was the illumination of the lights. Does it need to be in the actual recommendation for it to have effect on the approval or not?
Through Mr Mayor, if the council feels it important to regulate the extent of the illumination of the sign, then I would recommend that it be imposed as a condition if it's mindful to approve it with such, yes.
Any other questions, councillors?
Mayor, is it possible to recommend a smaller, same design but a much smaller size? I don't know how to go about that in an alternative motion, but it's just seeking your advice.
Well, if you speak to the staff during the week, you can move any motion you feel appropriate. Thank you. That takes us to the next item. It's item 4.9, proposed third-party signage, land sales, Clementine Estate, Apple Street, Upper Swan. It's on page 486 of your agenda. And Miss Rowe, you've got 5 minutes again if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you. We are partially against the recommendation. We continue to recognise and respect the rights of the developer. However, our original submission against the signs on Apple Street and Great Northern Highway Upper Swan was regarding the size of the signage. 7 metres tall, we felt, was exorbitant. We still consider the amended height of 5 metres to be too tall. This is another case of big not necessarily being better. Along Apple Street, we already have extraction sites, commercial dog kennel, road train assembly area. The residents want to improve the aesthetics, ambience and rural and visual amenity of the area, not distract from it with an abundance of unnecessary signage. The size of the sign has the potential to distract motorists. It is the very fact that Apple Street is a flat and straight road network mentioned in the officer's documentation which causes bad driver behaviour. This is witnessed every day. Drivers speed. Do not stop at the train line, even though this is a stop sign. They do burnouts. We know motorists are required to ensure their attention is given to the road and must drive to the conditions. However, the majority, rather than the minority, do not practice safe driving with the Upper Swan area, especially given that they can legally travel at 90 kilometres per hour along Railway Parade at the moment. We are also aware that there is nothing to stop the developer applying for an extension to have these large signs remain in place for longer periods. This may assist the developer subtly in sales, but will do nothing to improve the long-time residents' rural aesthetics. We appreciate and totally support the council officer's suggestion that 2 signs are too close to each other and that 1 sign would be sufficient. But please, can we please make it a smaller sign?
Thank you. Question, Councillor Bowman.
Kerry, were you aware that Clementine also wanted to put another sign on West Swan Road?
Well, there were 2 signs, Aaron. One was on West Swan Road and one was near the Upper Swan School. They were both put up without permission, and thanks to people making the City of Swan aware of this, the signs were removed. But no, I wasn't.
And Kerry, you used the road where the proposed sign's going to go.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on the safety of that intersection there?
Well, I'm really concerned because the big roundabout is going at the end of Apple Street on Great Northern Highway. The traffic that travels along Railway Parade now, that bridge is open all through Eccles Lake, the Vines, Allenbrook. The traffic is very, very large numbers of vehicles. And I really am very, very concerned.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? No other questions, and I thank you for your deputations, Ms Rowe. That takes us to item 4.11, Council's proposed telecommunications facility, Lot 3, Great Northern Highway, Middle Swan, and we have an in-person deputation from Mr Mark Bade. Thank you very much. You have 5 minutes, Mr Bade, if you need it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. My name's Mark Barty. I'm representing Optus in respect of item 4.11. So thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the staff recommendation of the approval with conditions for the proposed Optus telecommunications facility at Lot 3, Great Northern Highway, Middle Swan. As has been detailed in the documentation that's been lodged, the proposed facility has been selected after several years of careful investigation of the area in order to replace an Optus facility that's been decommissioned in the area in 2016. During that time, the need to replace the facility has grown more important given the increased demand placed on the network and in particular the need for reliable wireless data services and in-building coverage. Since 2016, there have been 2 attempts at establishing a new facility in the area. One had a DA refused by the City, whilst tenure with DPLH could not be finalised at the other location. The planning statement accompanying the application shows at Figure 1 the existing facilities in the surrounding area, 3 of which already host Optus equipment, including that at the council depot. As such, co-location is simply not an option in this case, as there are no existing structures or buildings of sufficient height on which to place the base station equipment. And to that end, the need for the facility, and in this case the need for a structure to support it, is well established. Optus have carefully considered a number of properties in the surrounding area over the course of several years and paying particular attention to non-residential zones. The proposed facility is located in a commercial zone, has a manageable impact on car parking, can provide the necessary service improvements and also demonstrates compliance with the Commonwealth EME standards. It will also allow for future co-location as desired by the City's telecommunications policy. As detailed in the officer's report, the proposal is generally in accordance with the City's telco policy and State Planning Policy 5.2. As expected, it will have varying degrees of visual impact on the surrounding area, as is almost always the case in urban areas. This impact is also usually unavoidable to some extent, and the carriers work to minimise it to the extent that it's possible. In this instance, the facility is not able to be set back the desired 200 metres from dwellings, but there are 3 dwellings only within 50 metres, beyond which the impact of the facility diminishes quickly with distance. It's agreed with the officer's report that while a small number of adjacent properties will experience a higher level of impact, the overall impact of the facility meets the necessary requirements for the delivery of essential infrastructure, a status the State Administrative Tribunal has reaffirmed on numerous occasions. As with all essential infrastructure, the proposed facility services a much wider locality and has a positive social and economic utility. The State's policy on telecommunications, which the City's planning scheme and telecommunications policy are guided by, is also clear in its intent. There is an increasing reliance on telecommunications by the community, and the necessary infrastructure must be established to support this reliance. It's not the intended outcome of the State policy that visual impact is the sole determining factor of the merits of such a facility, and a balanced approach is required as set out in the officer's report. The pandemic has shown the community both the flexibility and benefits of working from home, but also the weak points in the networks that they rely on to make that a reality. Reliable data speeds and in-building coverage have never been more important, and the networks see no sign of that demand abating, with the work from home revolution set to stay with us in one form or another. Following the receipt of public submissions, the design of the facility has taken those into account and sought to further minimise the impact, which is unavoidable to some extent. The size of the head frame has been substantially reduced, and the monopole head frame and antennas will be painted in a flat finish. In summary, the applicant supports the recommendation for approval with conditions, confident that extensive efforts have been made in the design and siting of the proposal to minimise impacts to the extent possible while providing a significantly improved service to the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson of staff. Any questions? Thank you, Councillor Kiley.
Yeah, thank you for your deputation coming along tonight. I'm just interested in the gap that pole will fill. Where is the shortfall in reception?
The DA that was refused by the city, which is a few hundred metres further south, was more or less in the middle of that gap. And if you look at the figure 1 in the planning statement, it shows the surrounding sites, and you can see that this one is slightly north of where it would ideally like to be. So it's filling in that area along Great Northern Highway and the suburban area either side of it. It replaced a facility that was at the old hospital site and was removed.
So the Blue Cross is the site where it's currently being proposed?
Correct, yes.
How many other sites have you looked at, or how many other landowners have you approached in the area to put the pole up?
The number of landowners is in the order of 8 to 10, but there's obviously a lot of properties, and it's a question of how far you take each one based on the initial response you get from people. During the assessment process, the council officer asked for more information on that, and that was responded to in the... there was a response to that RFI, which also included a response to the submissions that were received. But it's in that sort of order, and that's been over a number of years.
And through you, Mayor, the 4 poles shown, are they Optus as well, or are they competitors?
There's 3 that are Optus. So the ones to the north and south, the one at the council depot to the north, Midland Gate to the south, and there's one to the east, which is address just escapes me at the moment. The one to the south-east is not an Optus site, but that's well outside the area that could provide the improvements. So that figure is intended to show that this does sit in amongst that existing Optus network.
They seem quite close as it is. I can't see the need for another one in the area. They're only within probably 500 metres of the nearest pole. So how far do these poles extend? I mean...
well, it's a function of the demand placed on them. For example, facilities that are in the CBD are much closer together, and there's many more of them because there's many more people and much more demand, especially during peak times. But because the facility was there before and has been removed, the signal level that's available in the area from the other sites is insufficient to provide the level of signal required for in-building coverage. And with 4G and now 5G services, the facilities need to be closer together. So they typically are about 1 kilometre apart. No, thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is this. I've just been reading one of the objectors' deputations here, and it has occurred to me that obviously the landowner is getting compensated for having a tower placed on their site. Are they not? Presumably they're getting an annual payment of some amount of money.
Yeah, it's a commercial lease arrangement. That happens.
It's a commercial lease
yes.
arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And the tower is right on the boundary of their property. So what we've got is, I think it's sort of 3 dwellings within 200 metres. It seems to me that surely they ought to be compensated as well. So has there been any consideration to compensation for affected landowners within the 200 metres?
No, I don't. There's no direct relationship with those landowners, so no, the answer's no.
Yeah, so
that wouldn't be a normal...
So, for instance, Optus could consider offering them free telecommunication services because they're within the 200-metre limit.
I'm not sure what you want me to...
I'm just asking.
I guess anything is possible, but that's certainly not something that's being put to us in any of the objections.
All right. Well, would it be something you could put to Optus? Because obviously it would change the complexion if, local landowners were saying, oh, I might not be getting a lease agreement, but at least I'm getting free 5G.
I can certainly put that to Optus.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Catalano?
I've just got a quick question about the extent of this. How far does this pole service? What kind of area?
It's difficult to put a finite number on it because it depends on the number of users. But it certainly adequately fills that gap between the existing sites at Midland Gate and the council depot. But typically, as I was saying before, they are generally about 1 kilometre apart in an urban, suburban setting, and that will allow sufficient signal strength so that people can use phones inside their house and devices inside their house.
Oh, so it's Midland Gate and the depot that there's a gap there, is there, that you wanted to fill?
That's correct, because the existing site that was at the old hospital site was decommissioned in 2016. So suddenly there became a gap, and Optus is attempting to fill it.
All right, thanks for that. I just one other thing.
Yes.
You weren't the guys that were going to put a tower in Evelyn Reserve, were you?
I think that was one of the previous ones, yes. I think that's right.
So it was you. It was your.
It wasn't
proposal.
me, but it was. Yes,
No,
it wasn't
your
Optus, yes.
personal proposal, but it was your company's proposal to put a tower in there.
That's right, and
so no longer want to put it in that spot.
Well, the DA was approved back in 2018.
Yes.
And the tenure arrangement, which is with DPLH.
Sorry.
The tenure arrangement, so the leasing arrangement would be with the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage, so Estate Department. That arrangement could not be finalised and the DA expired.
So are you saying that the Evelyn Reserve was actually something that Department of Planning was?
The state owns that land, and the lease arrangement, the tenure arrangement couldn't be finalised.
Okay,
in fact, it barely progressed at all.
Thanks for that. Can I just ask staff about that?
Yeah, I've got other staff questions first. Any other councillors have got questions of the presenter? Then I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
And Councillor Henderson, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. In the key issues on page 514, second last dot point, the statement there that staff accept that there are adverse impacts and all such things, and we spend tens of thousands of dollars on fighting previous matters at the SAT and lost. I'm really wondering, why is it that we actually receive these before council? Because I see nothing but officer approval for these things. Why are we receiving? We should be saying, shouldn't we be saying, this is a federal responsibility, and why are we doing this? The community are being asked to make submissions, and they're continually being told, after they put their submission against, that too bad, we're going to do it. Why is this? Why are we part of this?
Mr. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a fair question. It's up to council if it decides, as we're suggesting, that these things inevitably get approved. Council can resolve not to have these come before it. Council can resolve we amend the scheme to make this a P use in all zones, which is what the state policy is, and we no longer have to advertise it. We can do all of that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Catalano was first, followed by Councillor Johnson.
No,
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following on from my previous questions, given there are obviously a lot of challenges with these facilities, they always get approved, and we always see that the immediately neighbouring landowners who are not compensated by a sort of a yearly lease are always the ones to object. Is it reasonable to put a condition in there to request Optus to consider providing free telecommunication services for those residents who are within the 200-metre limit? At least then we've got some equity. Is that a possible thing?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It would fail completely the Newbury test.
Just would like
There's
a bit
further
more.
question, Mr. Russell. I don't know if you heard it or not.
Why?
There is no planning need. There is no connection between the development and such a free service, and it's manifestly unreasonable, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff, councillors? I just note you've got a written deputation by Mary Despo against the recommendation, and takes us to item 4.12. It's a proposed dwelling in Eddercup Way in Midvale, and you'll notice that in your notes that this item has been withdrawn from the agenda by the CEO at the request of the applicant, and they're going to make modify their application. If the modified plans then meet the R code requirements, the application will be dealt with under delegation, won't come back to council. Thank you. And item 4.14, use of land for place of worship include associated buildings, works, car parking areas, access and civil works at lot 235 Great Northern Highway, Upper Swan. It's on page 557, and I welcome back to the microphone Ms Kerry Rowe. Thank you, Kerry. You have 5 minutes if you need them.
Thank you. This is to do with the place of worship on lot 235 Great Northern Highway. Zoning. We fail to see how a place of worship meets the general rural zone objectives. How does a church facilitate the use and development of land for a range of productive rural activities which will contribute towards the economic base of the region? Even with the church being located close to the Puma Roadhouse service station, the applicant has indicated the attendees at the church services will have a meal at the church, so they will not be spending any money in or contributing to the few available businesses in Upper Swan. The church does not even pay rates to the City of Swan. How does a church provide for a limited range of compatible support services to meet the needs of a rural community? In this case, the support services would only benefit churchgoers of the same faith. How does a church building promote the enhancement of rural character? Parking. If the place of worship has a capacity for 300 people, as stated, it would seem there is an assumption that 3+ people will travel in each vehicle to reach the capacity of the car park. Not all churchgoers will be travelling 3+ people to a car. As there is no public transport at all in Upper Swan on Sundays, then the only church access is by personal vehicles. Any overflow vehicles will therefore park at the closest point, which will be the Puma service station. Is that right, that they provide parking for the congregation? What will happen if the congregation increases? The rural amenity of Upper Swan is constantly and continually being eroded. There are currently 3 service stations on the west side of Great Northern Highway, within 1 kilometre of each other, which is somewhat overkill given the reduced use of Great Northern Highway since Northlink has opened. There are several transport depots on the east of Great Northern Highway, one of which is Bitutech, as well as the Skip Bin depot. There are also extractive sites on both sides of Great Northern Highway. And of course we have Clementine Estate on the west of the railway line. There are fewer and fewer residents left along Great Northern Highway. Are we in Upper Swan going to have an increase in applications to have other facilities, amenities located here, now they are not permitted in the Swan Valley Planning Act area? We really do wish to maintain aspects of our rural lifestyle while we still can.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Being no questions, I thank you again for your deputation. And that takes us to item 5.1, temporary closure of portion of Beachborough Road North, Whiteman. It's on page 590 of the agenda, an in-person deputation from Jason Curtis from Mel Connects. Thank you, Jason. You have 5 minutes if you need it.
All right, thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors and ladies and gentlemen. This deputation is in support of the recommendation of the closure of Beachborough Road North. We'd like to thank the City of Swan for working with us in the development of the plans and progressing our design. The design for the Malaga Precinct and Beachborough Road North is finalising final design for the Metronet project. Our rationale for the closure of Beachborough Road is based on the scale of the works and the project footprint in that area. And this is illustrated in plans on pages 596 and 597 of the report. the purpose is to create a grade separation of Beachborough Road over the new proposed railway line. This includes a 40-metre span bridge, approximately 8 metres in the air. There's 530,000 tonnes of embankment fill to be imported to the area, the construction of the new dual-lane Beachborough Road, the construction of the Malaga station and its precinct, and construction of the new rail alignment through the area. Surrounding the works is the Potters Church to the southwest, the new Malaga station and construction site, and the site facilities in the north, on the north and northwest. We've got strict environmental boundaries on the east side of the project, and the new rail alignment is dissecting the works, plus the Whiteman Park entrance to the northeast. And this creates a very constrained construction footprint. A key focus of the road and rail alignment is to minimise the impact to the environmental and clearing required under the EPA approval. And as everyone is aware, the Whiteman Park area is a narrow and it's also a, I suppose, high environmental sensitive area. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Congdon, you're first.
Thank you, Jason. I guess, look, I'm Ward Councillor for the Whiteman Ward, and we've received numerous phone calls in respect to this application for the closure of the road. The concerns that have been echoed by not only those who have indicated their comments in the report, but also from others that have made contact directly with the ward councillors in respect to the diversion of traffic down Belfin, which will cause issues in relation to Pelican and Cassowary, and then down towards the intersection of Marshall Road. We've also got the problem of where the disruption of traffic to the shopping centre, other business on the eastern side, the east-south side of where the road closure is, of the disruption to traffic. There's a lot of traffic comes down Hepburn Avenue, as you would be well aware, and that's going to look at a deviation of Marangaroo and then backtracking through the suburb of Balladura. Belfin, again, and it's referred to in the report as not affecting the rat run. Well, I can assure you there's already a rat run problem there now.
Councillor Congdon, if I can ask you.
Oh, sorry, that's a bigger story. Yes,
I know you've phrased it well. Now we need a question.
Right. Okay. So, given that the question is that given that the state government is the deliverer of Metronet, and also the state government is in ownership of Whiteman Park, why has there not been an allowance to drive the traffic through the section of Whiteman Park adjacent to Beachborough Road North, rather than create the so-called rat runs referenced in the document?
From the government point of view, I can't answer. Unfortunately, I don't work for the government. From a project perspective, there's a project boundary which has been set the limits and it's gone through the EPA, so we cannot go outside that project boundary. With regards to the rat run on Belfin, the detoured sign is through Altona and down through onto Reed Highway. So the Belfin run is not a signposted detour, but people will become aware of that and natural occurrence with roadworks as people settle down. We believe over time with this closure, the traffic will find a norm. With the shopping centre to the south, there at the Springs area, a lot of that was really impacted by the Tonkin extension project. We believe the impact and the numbers undertaken believe that this impact will be minimal, and while traffic will be while the closure of Beachborough Road will close, stop some traffic, the traffic from people coming on Marshall Road, instead of going north on Beachborough, will head south and settle out. So we just believe the impact for the shopping centre area will be minimal. With the traffic to Belfin, again, the numbers and the statistics show that it should not be too much of an inconvenience.
Further questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you. My next question is, in the council resolution, it refers to a 20-month commencing on the 11th of February 2022. There is a roundabout yet to be constructed at Belfin and Hepburn that is now, I think, 4 months behind schedule, and I would like to know whether this is the commencement date of this construction works is taken into consideration of still yet to be constructed roundabout on Belford and Hepburn.
I believe it has, and from our application, that date is the commencement date of the closure has been pushed back, which we're willing to accept, and we believe it's in line with the closure of the finishing of that roundabout works, and that roundabout works at an intersection will assist with the traffic congestion in that area should it occur.
Finished, Councillor Coleman? Councillor Parry, you're next.
I've got a very simple question. How comfortable are you with the 20-month time period that you provided in your report?
We are very comfortable in regards to based on the construction and what we know today.
Okay.
And
So if it got extended past the 20 months, would you consider compensation to the local community if it went on past the 20-month period?
that's not for me to answer that.
Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. You said that you were constrained in terms of your work area. Did Melconex set the constraints so as to minimise the cost, or was that from the state?
My understanding is from the state they create a project boundary that goes to the EPA for environmental approval, and so the project boundary is a lot larger than the project boundary. However, the environmental is created for the footprint of the works, and that's what's assessed.
So Melconex had nothing to do with that process. It was specifically the
Correct.
state.
We are the delivery mechanism. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks. I think my question's been answered. So Melconex is the contractor delivering the works?
Yes, correct.
So I guess I've got a question for staff.
Yep. Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And Councillor Johnson, a question to staff.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. My question is the contractor the right authority to be applying for this road closure? Surely it should be the state government.
Well, the application was received from Melconex, so that's quite common that the contractor doing the work, whether it's for a state government, if it's for a contractor doing work for a developer in a subdivision, it's normally the contractor that applies for the closure.
Any other questions, Councillor Johnson? Thank you. That takes us to the next item, councillors, which is something similar. It's item 5.2, proposed temporary closure of portions of Drumpillia Drive in Whiteman. It's on page 622, and Jason is the presenter again. You have 5 minutes if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. Again, we thank the City of Swan for their efforts in being involved in the consultation with the development of this plan. We support the recommendation of the report approving the closure. Again, the rationale behind the closure is due to the scale of the works and footprint and the constraints around it, as shown in the plans on page 628, 629 and 630, mainly for Nangara and Drumpellia Drive. These plans show that there's significant modifications to the intersection of Drumpellia and Nangara. We're creating a rail and pedestrian underpass in this area. The road height increases approximately 8 metres from the existing Drumpellia Road. There's a significant import of about 600,000 tonne of material to the area to create the structures and road. There's footprint constraints on all quadrants, and the project is also, the intersection has been moved south to the southwest to minimise the impact on the Roselli Circle Park there. The reason we chose to close Drumpellia Road is that Nangara is 5 times busier than Drumpellia Road in the peak hour periods, and a lot of the structure footprint falls onto the southern side of Nangara Road. It was, with the current the structure and design, it was impossible to, and the road heights and the structure heights, it was impossible to allow for any detour for that area. Modelling has also identified that by closing Drumpellia Road and putting diversions in so we can build the structure, the lights at Drumpellia and Nangara can be switched off, allowing a lot smoother through traffic along Nangara there. associated with this, there's going to be upgrade works to the roundabout adjacent to Penister Parade and Starflower Road, and these upgrades to the roundabout just ensure that the traffic flows associated with the detour. One of the reasons that we believe this works is that this traffic management is very similar to the previous traffic management that was put in place during the construction of Drumpelia. However, in this instance, the Northlink or Tonkin Highway extension takes a lot of that traffic already, and therefore the amount of traffic required for Drumpelia is a lot less than it was required prior to Tonkin Highway being open. In summary, just open for questions. Thank you.
Councillor Bowman was first.
Thanks for that. The detour route, do you expect the majority of drivers will follow that detour route?
Yes.
So, north of the promenade, west of Broadway, you think they're going to go all the way up to Tonkin, come back to Nangara, and then goes down Starflower and not do a rat run through Penasta?
Some will, yes.
Okay.
Sorry, just on that, we found that a lot of people get in that area or either head south onto Reed Highway and then or come in from the north.
Okay. There's been a number of questions from residents in Ellenbrook that didn't go answered, and one of the questions was, why couldn't you just tunnel under the current intersection instead of bringing all the fill in? And we've got pretty good technology these days that road could continue open and we wouldn't have to build it up by 8 metres. Was there a reason?
Reason from the contract, from our point of view, it wasn't in the brief. From a geotechnical engineering, the water table in that area is quite high, and associated with that would be a lot of maintenance and a lot of cost.
You mentioned there's going to be upgrades to the roundabout. When and in what particular? Is that going to be a second lane north and south so we can have a dedicated left and turn and a straight turn?
So there's just additional lane. There's and that will done. Sorry, it'll be done prior to the detour being put in place.
Right.
It's one of the works we do initially, so to make sure it's in place. And it's just I haven't actually got a drawing on it, but I think we have submitted a drawing showing what the actual roundabout will be, modifications will be.
So you're not sure, because at the moment, if I'm correct, going south and north there's only one lane, and so if I'm wanting to turn left coming out of Ellenbrook, I've got to wait for everyone's going straight or right. There'll be 2 lanes there as well.
I think from the south-north, there's definitely going to be a left turning pocket, and I know that from the north-south, I cannot remember the exact drawing.
Okay, and then final question. The detour takes you down to the 2 roundabouts at Park Sunflower Park and Drumpelia, which I personally don't use at the best of times. With the expected number of vehicles, do you honestly believe that's going to be safe?
Yes, with the traffic counts and that, we believe with the diversion we put in place and the traffic management, yes, it will be safe.
Okay. Councillor Jones, you are next.
Just want to clarify, you said the lights at Drumpelia will be turned off to make Nangara Road flow.
Correct.
What's going to happen to the people who are coming down Drumpelia to turn right or left onto Nangara?
That's closed as well.
Oh, closed as well.
So from Nangara to north to, I can't remember the name of the road, but it's only you can go straight around to Tonkin Highway. There's no connection points along that section of road.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson.
Thank you. Have you got modelling vehicle numbers that will do the rat run through Penister Parade?
We have provided those numbers, yes.
Right. If I could get that from staff, please. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Being no further questions, I thank you for your time and your deputations.
Thank you.
Which takes us to the next item. It's item 5.3. It's a very interesting topic. The indefinite temporary closure application for Railway Parade Upper Swan, but I've been told there is a good reason for that rationale. It's on page 638, councillors, of your agenda, and I welcome back to the microphone Kerry Rowe.
Okay, this is an ongoing issue. Throughout the traffic problems we have encountered at Upper Swan, We have been informed on many occasions that no decision will be made about the removal or not of the temporary barriers currently in place on Railway Parade until the upgrade to Apple Street and Orange Avenue has been completed. It has not. Orange Avenue is still one way in front of me, even though it was due to finish in June this year. The construction of the roundabout at Apple Street and Great Northern Highway is completed. It isn't. A full traffic management review is carried out. We were advised by council staff that we should put in an application for an indefinite temporary closure while the roundabout was being constructed. This would allow our application to be assessed as soon as the roundabout was completed. The officer felt that if we waited, the barrier may be removed and then we would have to go through the fight to get it put back. I'm sure those of you who were on council in 2019 will remember the time and effort put into getting the original temporary barrier installed. We've read through the many objections to the indefinite temporary closure and really would like the statistics on how many of these objectors actually do live in the immediate area and those who do not. It appears that most of the objections are from people using Upper Swan, specifically Railway Parade, as a thoroughfare to Midland and back. But we feel their objections are also without the knowledge that soon the end of Railway Parade onto Great Northern Highway is going to become a left-in, left-out. So you will not be able to access south on Great Northern Highway. Every traveller will need to use the Great Northern Highway Apple Street roundabout on at least one of their journeys. We also noted that some of the objectors stated that it was unsafe to cross the railway line at Apple Street. We are astounded that this should be mentioned. It is not Apple Street causing the unsafe behaviour, nor is it the railway line. It is the bad driver behaviour. The perceived unsafe railway crossing will be changed into a boom gate, which will alleviate the problem of the drivers having to risk the perceived unsafe conditions while crossing it. We believe it is about all drivers wanting to get to their destination as quickly as they can, and they see the Railway Parade route as being the quickest. Any opening of Railway Parade will return to the terrible conditions we suffered prior to the temporary closure. Why should Upper Swan residents have to suffer all the associated traffic problems we had prior to the temporary closure? Further objections were made regarding the volume of traffic using Great Northern Highway, making it harder to access it via Apple Street. The roundabout on Railway Parade and Great Northern Highway intersection will make it much easier to be able to access Great Northern Highway instead of going along Railway Parade. There appeared to be no or very little forward planning when the Ellenbrook Bridge at Railway Parade was constructed and when the Satterley development was proposed. We asked councillors that this matter be deferred until such time as the statistics are available on the number of objectors from outside the Upper Swan area. The new roundabout is complete. Upgrade to Apple Street and Orange Avenue is completed. Traffic counts are taken. The left in, left out at Railway Parade has been constructed. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley.
Kerry, I don't know if you know, but it was my motion that got it closed back in 2019, and I do recall the time and effort put into getting that closed. And being a regular user of the road, I note that it is quite easy to go up Great Northern Highway and turn on Apple and cross the railway line. It hasn't affected my trip up there whatsoever. And I'd like to know from you as a resident of the area how it's impacted your lifestyle, or how do residents in the area feel about the closure to date?
The residents who live along Railway Parade have had a new lease of life. They have a nice quiet street and they're more than happy. The people coming from outside the area have to go that way, so they're all coping very well. The police are picking up a lot of people who are not stopping at the stop sign, so that's good for revenue along the way. So I would say that a lot of the residents are very, very happy. There are some who are not happy because even the bus now cannot go through, so the bus is going down down Citrus Street or down Lemon Street and using the minor roads and are having difficulty turning around. Personally, I want it open. But as the president of the association, or chairperson, I have to speak on this behalf.
And why would you want it open personally?
Because they're all coming down in front of me. And it's not in my backyard. I don't believe that the vehicles should be using the minor roads, the roads that are not built as Railway Parade is built. But that's not me speaking on behalf of the ratepayers. That's a personal thing.
And if I could, Mayor, how many trucks have been bowling down Railway Parade at 80 kilometres, 90 kilometres an hour since the road was closed?
A huge number, because they can't get through and their GPS still sends them along there. So then they have to reverse. Semi-trailers have to reverse from where the barrier is back to then be able to access Lemon Street or Citrus Street or Orchard Street to get around.
So you're suggesting we should just open up and let them bowl through at 80, 90 kilometres
No,
an hour?
I'm suggesting a traffic calming device, which I know the City of Swan don't do, except I have one in the front of my place on Orange Avenue, so the City of Swan do it, but Satterley paid for it.
Well, just one point. I would support a deferment because my original motion was to wait until the roundabout was constructed and completed, so I would support a deferment on that. Thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Kerry, so do you agree that with that closure at the moment, it is Lemon and Orange Street, they're all just going via the closure that way?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think also the left in, left out would solve a lot of the problems?
No, I don't believe that.
So
I've lived there all my life, Aaron, and I've always gone out that way.
Yep.
So to change my behaviour, people will then have to come back along Railway Parade, down along all these other streets, all the locals as well, to come out via Apple Street.
So, but you don't think it would reduce the number of people going down Railway Parade if they can go left out?
Yes, I believe it will. Okay. Yes, because they won't be able to go out on south on Great Northern Highway.
Okay.
No.
Got a few questions of the staff, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions of Ms Rowe? Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. So what you're saying is then you would support the barrier being removed once the roundabout's in place and once the left in, left out at the end of Railway Parade?
Well, that I can't. The Ratepayers Association won't. But I believe that they won't support it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bowman, you've got questions of staff?
Yeah. The left in, left out, how far away are we looking at that being created?
I don't have an exact timing for it. Main Roads aren't planning on doing it imminently, but I believe that the trigger for it as part of the development was 150 dwellings in the subdivision. So, but I don't have a detailed timing for it.
And my next question, Mr Mayor, the railway crossing, which I know I've asked questions before about as well, ARC's involved in that, aren't they? So that could be years away, knowing them.
I won't. I'll leave that one alone. But there was a confidential report to council on the project, so there are some negotiations going on with ARC and Western Power. We're hopeful that they will soon be resolved. But it's a project that was money on last year's capital budget for it that wasn't spent because of it. There's money on this year's that may not be spent because of it, and I think even probably the previous years as well, but we are certainly following up with them regularly and progressing it. But again, I don't have an exact time.
Okay, and my final question, Mr Mayor. The speed limit on Railway Parade north of Apple Street is 90. It seems quite excessive to me, or maybe I'm just getting older and drive slower. Is there an avenue to look at reducing that speed limit as well? Because they're approaching that intersection very fast. And if you are doing a 70 or 80, you get overtaken.
Yes, the city can request a review of the speed zoning.
Councillor Johnson was next. Okay, Councillor Kiley.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to ask the CEO why are we bringing this recommendation forward when we haven't fulfilled the terms of the previous council motion in 2019, which was to only bring it back when the roundabout on Apple Street and Great Northern Highway would be completed.
Mr.
completed.
Yeah. This is being brought back in response to a closure application by the Residents Association. So that's what's generated it. Certainly, and so like the public advertising, I can't remember, don't know exactly when it was received, but the advertising and things was done a while ago. So we've received an application, we've advertised that we're dealing with it, we're bringing it back to council, and as was outlined in the deputation, and I'm not aware of the advice from staff, but it does seem like logical advice to apply for an application before the other work is finished. But as was also outlined, the developer, the roads haven't been upgraded in the development as fast as anticipated, and the roundabout has taken longer than planned. So that's the only reason, is because it's just been, we've been through a process and it's been objections, so they're coming to council. But having said that, there's certainly no objection from staff if council were of the mind to defer the item until after that work has occurred, and a report would be coming back at that time anyway.
Through you, Mayor, I'll foreshadow a deferment of this item until that roundabout has been completed.
Got a question now, Councillor Johnson? Well, Councillor Johnson's got a question. Councillor Johnson, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, look, I've got a further question here. So the original motion said that we're going to keep the temporary barrier road, the barrier in place until we've built the roundabout at Apple Street and the Great Northern Highway is constructed and Northlink on-ramp is completed. It sounds like what we need to do is to add an additional condition, that is, we keep it closed until the left in, left out at the junction of Railway Parade and Great Northern Highway is in place. That would seem like a reasonable thing to do. Is that, through you, Mr Mayor, to Mr Coaten, is that a reasonable approach?
There would be some merit to that. I'd have to sort of just double check on a few things, but yes, that would seem a reasonable approach.
I request those councillors talk to Mr Coaten during the week. If you're going to foreshadow something, consult with the local ward members, and we'll get the best result, hopefully. Any more questions, councillors? Okay, time is now 8 o'clock. We're going to have a 10-minute break and then come back for item 5.4, so everyone can have a 10-minute comfort break. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We're going to reconvene at item 5.4, Midlands Men's Shed and a work shed. It's on page 673, and we have an in-person deputation from Mr Patrick Irwin on behalf of the Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Group against the recommendation. Thank you, Mr Irwin. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Men's Shed, of course, is a great institution, and we certainly support the Men's Shed and the work of it. We're not against the development of the Men's Shed, we're against the way this particular development is proposed because it involves the removal of a mature rudis tree we estimate is probably at least a century old. We've got records of it back in 1953, photographic records from Landgate Historical Imagery, and it was a mature tree back then. So we completely support the aims and objectives of the Men's Shed, and certainly support their right to extend the shed. As a designer, I'm aware that the brief is usually the problem, and the problem in this case seems to be that the brief has not taken recognition of the site values and the topography, i.e. it has ignored the value of this tree. And where it wants to extend is actually currently a brick gable. There are many other ways you can extend a shed. You could extend it left, right, forward, it's important to consider that the brief driving the development, it should be properly constructed. I don't know if the person who is responsible for the design knows anything about brief writing. And a proper design process would have established the topography and the value of it. And Blackadder Catchment Group work on the Blackadder Creek, which is close to this tree location. So we have an interest in the Goal 5 of City's local biodiversity strategy is to retain all remaining Guildford complex vegetation. In fact, only 5% of the original extent of this vegetation complex still exists. 5%. So every tree, every particularly rudis, is a significant tree. They can live for 500-600 years, these trees, and they provide enormous habitat with hollows. They're very important. They're almost the last thing standing of the original vegetation because they're so big and strong. They survive when everything else is getting mowed and tromped on. So, in conclusion, the Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Group does not support the proposal to destroy the old flooded gum tree behind the Midlands Men's Shed. And I would be quite happy to offer my services pro bono to help the Men's Shed get a design up that is efficient and effective and achieves their results without damaging the environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Yeah, thanks. With the designs, what kind of designs do you think could be done as an alternative to, spreading out across the site so that trees have to be chopped down? What kind of things do you think?
Well, it's where you choose to extend. And I notice at the east end of the shed, for instance, there's some small trees, but they're not old or established and mature trees. You could extend the east end with just the removal of a couple of small trees, which are growing up very close to the shed anyway, so it probably would probably turn out to be a bit of a nuisance down the track anyway, if kept. So, but there are other options. You could take the middle of the shed forward because there's a sort of bit of a northern courtyard, and it really depends on what they're trying to achieve. So you need, again, to sit down with the Men's Shed and take their brief, see what the purpose of the extension is, how they want it to use the space, and so you look at the whole situation in terms of the context, the site context.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Johnson.
My question is very similar. So, Mr. Rearing, where else would you put the proposed shed so it doesn't involve chopping the tree down? It's just a matter of moving it around.
Well, you see it's like a L shape on plan with a short stub heading north, which is what they want to extend out towards to take out the rudis tree. You could extend, as I said, to the east. You could extrude the shed out to the east. Or you could, depending on what the purpose of the extension is and how you want it to work, you might want to make the shed fatter in the middle and extend the sidewall out, which might involve changing the roof slope and that sort of thing. And, it's all depends on how it's to work. So you have to look at the plan in context of all the requirements, aims and so forth.
Thank you.
Councillor Bowman.
Patrick, I know this is the council recommendation, the officer's recommendation is to replace it with one tree. Would a better outcome be replace it with 5, 10, for example?
Well, the nature of the problem is that to take a mature tree out, you're not going to get that habitat back. If it's a couple of 100 years old, for argument's sake, it'll have had limbs broken off and creating hollows, which are habitat for birds, cockatoos, this sort of thing. And in the case of the Blackadder Creek issue that's coming up also, kingfishers and all sorts of birds live in these hollows, and of course possums and so forth. So the habitat aspect of these trees takes a long time. You only get it with a mature tree. So if you take down a mature tree and put in 5 seedlings or young trees, you're not getting like for like. It might sound mathematically equable, but you're not getting the same value. And these trees are really, these flooded gums are a really important part of our original habitat. And as I say, there's only 5% of this Guildford complex vegetation still remaining.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. You're next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question to staff. Just regarding the council...
Councillor Knight, have you got a question for Mr Irwin? We'll have staff questions at the end. Thank you, Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Mayor. Patrick, you're an architect, aren't you, professionally?
Yep.
So that's a very generous offer to work pro bono. So when you look at this, in your judgment, there's no issue about saving that tree and just making the addition without damaging that tree.
As I say, it's one of the things that would go into the brief right at the beginning. What's the context of the site? What's the topography? And that would include, there is a mature rudis, we're not going there. You know,
Yeah.
that would have to be in the brief, right? But you've got to look at what the requirements are. Until I've had a chance to sit down with the men's shed and find out what they need, I can't really tell you what the outcome should be.
Thank you. I hope they'll work with you.
Okay.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, so thank you, Mr Irwin.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson, you were first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question to staff. Were there any Aboriginal consultations conducted regarding the site and the tree? And also, when will we receive the decision on the heritage approval, the Aboriginal heritage approval?
Mr Coaten, thank you.
I don't have a timing on when that will be. The Aboriginal Heritage approval, my understanding is that it's not far away, but I don't have a timing on it. I don't have the process that was followed in hand, so I'd have to get that information to you.
Thank you. Councillor Howlett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question is to staff. Just about the history of the lease, can I just ask how long approximately the men's shed has had the lease with the city?
I'll have to take that on notice.
And perhaps also maybe the current length of the lease if it's got a renewal point coming up. Another question, which will probably have to be taken on notice as well, is the bushfire attack level. Can I just ask when that report was, the latest report was completed on that?
Again, I'd have to take that on notice. I would suggest that it wouldn't have been too long ago, but I don't have the exact date.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple more. I don't know who to put this to, but has the city requested from the Midland Men's Shed a business plan for their future growth or expansion to understand where they want to be and what their growth is? Because if we're building something, it'd be nice to know what their growth expansion plans are.
Groups with leases sometimes submit a marketing plan. I'm not sure if they have got one, so again, I'd have to take that on note.
And my final question is, it does speak to the two other associations, the Swan District's Pigeon Club and also the Progressive Axemen. So am I right to think that the Midland Men's Shed speak for both of those other groups, or have they been approached as well?
Not aware that they speak for other groups. They've obtained, this funding is specifically for something for them, so I don't think that they would speak for the other group.
Councillor Johnson, you are next.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, through you, I think, to Mr Coaten. I wondered if the architects gave any consideration to putting the proposed shed where the existing containers are and moving the containers to where the proposed shed is. Did that ever come up as an option?
There were a range of options looked at. I'm not sure if that one specifically was, but the consultant architect met out there with the Midland Men's Shed, and I understand also with the representatives of the Blackadder Woodbridge catchment group as well, though perhaps it wasn't Mr Irwin. But, and they have looked at a range of options, so it's not just a case of finding somewhere else where the building can go, it's finding somewhere else where it can go that meets the needs of the men's shed. So that meeting has occurred and lots of options have been looked at. The reason it's before council is because we haven't been able to find a solution that meets, that saves the tree and meets the needs of the men's shed.
Councillor Catalano.
Sorry, Mr Coaten, did I hear you say that representatives of the Blackadder Catchment Group had been consulted on this by the men's shed?
by city staff in relation to the tree, yes. That's my understanding of it, yes.
Oh, what, through the tree report? Through the tree report?
And my understanding is that staff have also discussed options in relation to ways to try and save the tree.
Oh, does the Blackadder Catchment Group agree with that? The Blackadder Catchment Group don't agree with it, I don't think.
I'm happy to stand corrected. As I said, I think that was what I thought had occurred, but I'm happy to stand corrected.
Oh, okay. You're not sure. Okay, thanks. Now, I just wanted to talk a bit more about the bushfire attack level, because you know, there's these structures. I mean, obviously the Pigeon Club's been there a while, and the Woodcutters Club's building's been there a while, and now we've got this one here. And I was just like, I'm a bit concerned that what's going to happen is eventually somebody's going to go, oh, gee, now there's a risk of fire, and then we end up with all this clearing because we've got these buildings there. And I just wondered, like, what's going to stop basically this whole area being denuded of these ancient trees? Because of these activities that are going on down there, because of bushfire or whatever, but particularly bushfire I was thinking about in this particular question.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I can answer that. This report is obviously just about the one building and the removal of the one tree. I'm not quite sure that I understand.
Well, what I'm saying is, you know, it's death by 1,000 cuts, isn't it? Because it's one tree now, and then the next one is, oh, it's bushfire risk, so then it's another 5
Have you got
tree.
a question, Councillor
Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to explain my question. So we get some context, because you didn't understand it. And the question is, one tree now for development, and then will, down the track, there be some questions or some proposal raised in this council that actually, oh, well, there's all these activities going down.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. Relevance.
It's about the removal of these trees?
Well, if you can ask a specific question, Councillor Catalano, but I can let you know, from my understanding, the Men's Axemen's Association and the Pigeon Club have been there for well in excess of 25 years.
Exactly.
So it's not a new building. They've been there renting that property for 25 years.
Exactly. That's right. But this is relatively new, is it not? This building here, this one that these...
Well, the one that's
Men
proposed.
shed?
Well, that's what the application's before us, to build the shed.
That's right, exactly.
So
we're building more things down there is what is happening. More facilities, more buildings are being built down there. So the question is, are we going to get to a point where, because of these increase in activities, that there's going to be some request then to cut trees down because of the bushfire attack level? Is a question I'm asking.
I don't think anyone can answer that question. We're dealing with a application for one shed, which would require, as per the officer's report, the removal of one tree. There seems to be an objection to that, so we'll debate it next week. So I'll ask, have you got any more questions, Councillor Catalano?
Well, I would like an answer to that question.
Well, I don't think Mr Coaten can project...
When do you think that question could be answered?
Well, I don't think he can answer it, and if you let me explain why. You're asking about future development of which we've got no control over. We don't know who might want to go in there next, another association. So until we receive an application, we'd only be guessing.
Okay, I'm not talking about an application. What I'm talking about is the bushfire attack levy, the level.
Yes.
You know, there's this requirement now that when you have a building and activities, you've got to have a certain amount of risk, bushfire risk, that's got to be attended to. And it's my understanding it's the bushfire attack level. And things have to conform to that. Correct? So what I'm saying is that eventually going to apply to these activities down there so that we see even more of this very precious bushland removed because of this proliferation of activities and this new building down there? That's a question.
Well,
Is that going to happen?
The question is answered by the report, Councillor Catalano.
Is it yes or no?
Well, to support the shed in its current format at its current location, one tree would have to be removed to comply with the bell. But we can't estimate or guesstimate what applications we may receive in the future.
Okay, all right then.
Councillor Bowman.
Through Mr Mayor to Mr Coaten. Mr Coaten, would I be right in assuming that the men's shed had a limited budget, which I think they've got a grant of 152, and as such, was it being designed to meet that budget?
Yes, that's correct.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Howlett.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the users of the men's shed, whether we know their postcodes. Are they generally from the City of Swan, or do we know if they are coming in from perhaps the Shire of Mundaring or Kalamunda? And I'm just curious to know if that Midland men's shed is really facilitated for the men of the Swan, or if it's open to all areas.
Mr Mayor, point of order again. We're dealing with one application. I don't see where the people who go to the men's shed is relevant to this item.
Thank you. Having attended several of their events, most of the attendees are from the City of Swan, and I will forward every councillor a copy of their latest newsletter after this meeting. Councillor Catalano.
In agenda forums, do we have points of order? I don't believe we do. This is not actually a meeting of council. This is actually an agenda forum, and I think if we're going to all start using points of order in agenda forums, I think we might need to actually look at the rules.
Thank you, Councillor Catalano. I'm trying to run the meeting as smoothly as I can. If someone brings an item to my attention which they don't think is correct, then I'll determine what the correct procedure will be. Thank you. Okay, being no, do you have a further question, Councillor Howard, or you asked it? Thank you. That completes item 5.4. We now go on to item 5.6, the Woodbridge Creek footbridge replacement. It's on page 686 of your agenda. We have one in-person deputation by Ms Francesca Irwin on behalf of the Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Group against the recommendation. Thank you. You have 5 minutes if you need it.
Thank you. Just checking if councillors have received these photographs, and if not, can we get them sent down? Have you all got them? Checking for nods heading, heads nodding. Have you got them? No. Can we please, not in my 5 minutes, can I just make sure this gets handed down then? Thank you very much.
I think that's the Lloyd Street Bridge.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and councillors and staff. As you said, my name is Francesca Irwin, speaking on behalf of Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Group regarding proposed Woodbridge Creek footbridge, agenda item 5.6. The group's been restoring remnant wetland in this area for over 22 years. We have a well-respected profile for the outcomes and community engagement and education that we muster. We are constantly in this area, planting, weeding, bird watching, etc. Over the years, hundreds of adults and children have helped with locally provenanced plantings that create wildlife corridors and restore remnant bushland. And this work spreads across the floodplain, both sides of the creek where the bridge is. Our first observation is that the council budget of 2021, which is available online, shows that there was an 80k allocation for a footbridge replacement at Woodbridge Creek and 15,000 also allocated to the Blackadder Creek footbridge. No more detail, totally unclear where the former is. We wonder if the replacement was really sought or has got misunderstood or misallocated. It's certainly not needed at Blackadder Creek Farm Bridge. We don't know where you're referring to at Woodbridge Creek because nobody's told us. Certainly it's not needed at Blackadder. So I'm talking about Blackadder, but I'm pointing to a confusion and maybe misallocation of information. So we're requesting that you consult with the community on issues like this. There was no opportunity to comment on the city's Have Your Say website, and the officer's report said that consultation consisted of a notice on the bridge and letters sent to less than 20 nearby residences. Look, here's some background. 23 years ago, my first walk through Blackadder Woodbridge wetlands was over this bridge and into that area, and it was memorable. One of the reasons we moved here, and would still be for others walking over it now. The Farm Bridge at Blackadder has an incredibly atmospheric, peaceful, yesteryear feeling, stepping you into the world of nature. Have a look at those photos, that's why I want you to look at them. There's no engineering report to back this unnecessary bridge replacement, not that we are confined or have been advised or know anything about. The bridge appears solid and safe. So our really big concern is that putting in an unrequired bridge replacement is going to involve heavy machinery. It will damage and cause the death of habitat, trees, wildlife. Oh, and this is never minding the fact that it's a registered sacred site and requires a Section 18, never minding the site that there's no official pathway to or beyond this bridge. So it just seems totally weird. If anything, the bridge may require some minor repairs to its railings. And we do recommend that Council install a sign about the creek wetlands history, its significance, the main bird species that it supports. This will create an enhanced sense of place for the visitors. In conclusion, Blackadder Woodbridge Catchment Creek does not support the proposal to replace the Blackadder Creek footbridge.
Thank you. I have any questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Thanks. So are you referring to the photographs with the sacred kingfisher and the sacred kingfisher feeding chicks at the hollow?
Oh, those are hollows, yeah. The previous speaker mentioned hollows as being a significant
that's
part of
in
mature
the-
trees. Yeah. So
That's
those are
in the
migratory
information
birds.
we got tonight.
Those are migratory birds that our group has been taking bird surveys since 2015. Those birds are observed returning. There's several other types of birds there as well: sacred kingfishers, pardaloops, rufous whistlers, western warblers, Nankin night herons. There's some fantastic birds down there. This is their habitat. This is their place. You put in a great big you put in a big unneeded bridge development there. That whole area will have to be cleared in order to get to it.
Okay, thanks. And have you actually done any plantings down there yourself?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, didn't I say that in my presentation? I might have cut it to be quick for you. Our family's been doing work there along with everybody else since the group formed in 22 years ago. We've been using Provenance seedlings to create the habitat that's down there, and it's very much part of our family tradition, and a lot of locals who love that area.
Okay, and what was it like before you started doing
It
work
was
down?
absolutely denuded. That whole area was flattened. What was the area like before?
Yeah, before you guys started planting
Yeah,
down
it was
there.
being used as a farmland, and so it was a degraded site, and it was full of invaded species without the remnant revegetation what's happened to it now, with fantastic wildlife corridors that take nature from the river over to the creek, and have not fully populated, but done a really good job of bringing back that area without the use of chemicals, by the way.
Okay, all right then, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Yes. Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Irwin. First question of staff by Councillor Parry. Councillor Catalano.
I just wondered how we're going with the Section 18 on this one, Mr. Coton.
Yeah, the work's being undertaken in the footprint of the existing disturbed site, but there is a Section 18 that's been applied that the city has obtained for the larger park area as part of the ongoing project.
I was under the impression that with the new changes to the Aboriginal Heritage Act, that actually all those Section 18s now had gone into abeyance, and in fact there needed to be new approvals. Because this does require digging. I mean, there'll be quite a lot of material that'll have to come out of here, I imagine.
Yeah, the work will just be replacing the existing bridge. It won't be disturbing any.
So there's
further
no.
ground.
Okay then. So will there be any digging at all? Will there be any digging?
There will be involved in the removal of the
What
bridge.
digging is a disturbance of the site under the Aboriginal Heritage Act, and it requires a Section 18.
Follow up on that. I'll take that on notice.
That's always been my understanding in the past with anything to do with the Blackadder Creek, since it is actually an Aboriginal site it's registered under the Aboriginal Heritage Act.
Mr. Coaten will follow up and get the information.
Yes, okay, thank you. And I just wanted to know actually how much vegetation was going to be disturbed in this process.
I don't have the exact answer. There's no trees planned on being removed. It is a design and construct contract, so as part of that, a construction management plan will be submitted to the DBCA as part of the work.
To DBCA?
Yeah.
Okay. And when was it likely to be done, do you know? When is the work going to be done?
No, I don't have information on that. It's all subject to what council decides to do. Then it'll be a process of calling tenders.
And just one last question about the budget and the fact that the 80,000 was actually allocated for Woodbridge Creek. I mean, I don't imagine that the city in any way was confused about this creek not being called Woodbridge. In fact, this creek has always been called Blackadder, and I'm sure the city is not confused about that. So why have we not got an answer about the budget? Like why the 80,000 from Woodbridge Creek now being put into this bridge when it wasn't budgeted?
I did send an email to all councillors on that. And I acknowledge that it is confusing with the name of the bridge, not reflecting the name of the creek, but the name of the bridge, the names of the bridges are what's in our system, so that's actually the names of the bridge in the city's system, and I acknowledge that it's not the correct name in terms of the creek, but that's the bridge's name in our system.
All right then, okay, thank you.
Councillor Parry, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A quick question. I'm safely assuming then that there's structural damage in regards to this bridge as well, in reference to page 686 in your last comment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So what is the liability if we do not fix this bridge for the council?
Well, it's obviously not an easy question to answer. Those situations aren't always straightforward, so there's assessments made in relation to the duty of care and level of risk, etc. So I'm not able to give you a definitive answer.
Councillor Congadin, you have a question?
Councillor Parry beat me to the question, Mr. Mayor, and it wasn't exactly the same.
Thank you. Councillor Howlett's next, followed by Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask staff, is there an overriding plan for this area? Because as I read through the summary of submissions, the ones that are listed as support, two of them actually really supportive of a path to the bridge as well. One of them doesn't even talk about the bridge, but it wants a path only. There's actually one that only just mentions the bridge. So my question is, I feel that if we're going to, is it premature to be doing this bridge without thinking about, the bridge is going to nowhere, essentially. There is no path to it. There is no path beyond it. If we create a bridge, are we not creating an expectation that we will be putting in lighting, potentially, pathways to and from it? And if that's the case, perhaps we should just consider a whole overriding plan for this place and do it nicely and do it right and do it with the community consultation. And that way, that's my question.
This is simply replacing an existing bridge that has been determined to be in poor condition with another bridge. So it's not a new bridge. It's a new construction, but it's not a bridge already exists there. So if it is a bridge to nowhere, it's already a bridge to nowhere, and people obviously do use it. There's and a number of the submissions did make comments in relation to wanting paths and lighting and things like that. There's no proposals for that. There's no money on the budget to do that. And it hasn't sort of come through as a strong community priority in relation to that. So there's no future plans to do that. So that something like that would be a decision of council if council wished to put in paths and lighting. But
sorry, Mr. Coden, another question for you. How often has that bridge been undertaken structural reports on a regular basis? Do you do it annually? Is it every 2 years? or when was the last time perhaps a report was done on that bridge?
Visual inspections are done annually on them. I'm not sure in relation to that one specifically, because once the work had been done and then it had been identified for replacements, I'm not sure if a follow-up one was done.
Is it possible to ask for the previous inspections on that, just so we can gauge how much it has deteriorated from the last time it was inspected to this time? Just it helps with a bit of a timeline, perhaps, for urgency.
I can try and find that information.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. My first question relates to the consultation area. So if councillors look on page 693, you'll see that blue area, which is where the consultation letters were sent. So I guess my question through you, Mr Mayor, I guess to Mr Coaten, is why was that particular group of houses, which are the new houses, selected?
My understanding is that they were within a sort of a radius or of a distance of the bridge, but I certainly would agree that further consultation could have occurred, should have occurred in that occasion.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one question is, would it be better? I've read the deputation from Miss Melinda Brackley, and she points out that the people in that blue area there, in Aquaviva Circle, those houses are relatively new. I don't think they're certainly not more than 10 years old. Whereas compared to the rest of Vivash, I think the rest of Vivash is probably about 50 years old. So those people would have a stronger connection to the bridge. So I guess I'm really questioning, would it be a good idea to do a bit more consultation to the existing long-standing homes in the area?
Yes, council could decide that if they thought it was appropriate.
Thank you. Now, I've got some questions about the bridge. I went to see the bridge for the first time at the weekend. I'd never seen it before. I was immediately struck by the resemblance to a similar bridge in the John Forrest National Park up the Helena River, basically on the way to Pipehead Dam. And that bridge always struck me that it appeared to be a sort of ex-military bridge. Is this bridge a purpose? Is this Woodbridge Creek or Blackadder Creek bridge we're talking about here? Is this a purpose-built bridge, or is it an ex-military bridge of some sort? I think they used to call them Bailey bridges.
I'd have to take it on notion. I don't believe it's a military bridge. I believe it was a bridge to some farmland in the area, but I'd have to confirm that.
Yeah, because my observation, it looks like a former transportable military bridge that's just been bought and plonked down there. And as a result, if it was such a bridge, it would be an awful lot stronger than needed to be a footbridge. Would you agree?
Well, I'm not sure if it was a military bridge.
That's a fair comment. Look, the report that we've got in the agenda does not actually say, I don't believe it says that it's unsafe, and I've got the inspection report here from November 2019, and it's something of a tick and flick report, but if I get towards the end of it, it says maintenance required, investigate extent of corrosion to truss and buckling to bottom chord members. Now, just a question about that. When I went to look at the bridge myself, I noticed that the bottom chord members on both sides were buckled, which immensely puzzled me because I couldn't imagine how they could possibly have got buckled through fair wear and tear of the bridge. And as I'm sure Mr. Coaten knows, those two members that are buckled are in tension, not in compression, so they couldn't have buckled through through stress on the bridge. So it kind of implies that those members must be in good condition if they've not straightened out over the years.
The inspection that was undertaken was a visual one. We obviously haven't done design calculations, etc. on it. So as I alluded to earlier, this is being replaced as part of our normal infrastructure renewal program. So the condition has been assessed as being in poor condition, and that's why it's intended to be replaced.
Okay. So it says in the bridge inspection report to invest the extent of corrosion. So I'm just wondering, have we actually done that further detailed inspection of the corrosion? Because it's an extremely solid, thick bridge, and the corrosion may not be sufficient to actually weaken the bridge.
Yeah. Follow-up inspections have been done by staff. I'm not aware that we've had a corrosion expert in to look at it, but follow-up inspections have been done by staff, which is the basis for renewing it.
Okay. So I guess the next question is, when I went down to look at the bridge, I saw that the bridge there was no sign on it saying danger, unsafe bridge, highly corroded, keep off. It was still available for people to use. So I must assume that at this point the staff believe that the bridge is still safe, and the report doesn't say that it's unsafe. So it's safe at the moment. Is that a fair comment?
It's not being replaced because it's unsafe. It's being replaced just as part of our normal bridge renewal, that it's at the end of its life. It's in poor condition. People walking over there, the risk of the bridge collapsing with somebody walking over there is minimal. So it hasn't been closed for those reasons. Yeah,
okay. That's exactly what I thought. I thought the bridge, I jumped up and down and it didn't move at all. I thought it's absolutely solid. So if we're going to, could we consider alternatively maintaining the bridge by putting some kind of galvanic protection on it to prevent the corrosion? Could that be an option?
If council wished to keep the bridge and for staff to investigate renewal options, leaving the existing bridge in place, that would be something we could look at.
Okay. And I think the replacing the handrails would appear to be relatively straightforward. It's just a welding job of some sort, I would imagine. Is that the case, do you think?
As I think I mentioned earlier, we don't have the original design information on it, so as I'm sure you'd appreciate, it makes it very difficult to do sort of design calculations and things like that. If we did do renewal work on it, we would end up with a bridge that we couldn't confirm was in accordance with Australian standards. So there would always be that risk that council would have to accept, as was alluded to by Councillor Parry earlier on.
But it's a pretty small risk, isn't it? Or we'd have closed it off by now. And it doesn't move. If you did a load test on it, you could probably demonstrate that it's safe.
Well, we haven't. That would probably be a risk assessment down the track that we haven't.
So it would be reasonable to consider an alternative solution that provides some kind of galvanic protection to the bridge. Maybe it's put some coatings on it to slow down the corrosion, and to put some handrails on it, and to just inspect it on a regular basis.
If council feels the bridge is significant and wants to keep it, they would be options that staff could look at.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. No other questions, councillors? Thank you. We'll go to the next agenda item. Just have to turn the page. Item C 1.5 was completed earlier, so we'll go to item C 1.7, and it was a motion by Councillor Budovnik, and of two in-person deputations is on page 965, and Miss Kelly Ovens, first presenter. You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kelly Ovens. I am an owner-occupier of a house that's 116 years old in Midland. I'd like to congratulate Councillor Lucas on being elected as our mayor of our city, and I'd also like to congratulate councillors who are newly elected or were re-elected in October. I'm speaking in favour of Councillor Budovnik's motion because it's an important motion, and I thank her for her continued effort to preserve this unique pocket of history in Midland. The buildings in question are an important piece in the fabric of Midland's history and of what remains of Midland's built heritage. The buildings all have important links to the history of Midland and should be preserved because of this, and because they are in good condition and built together in a small cluster. A few years ago, after pressure from the community, the City commissioned Hocking Heritage Studio to conduct assessments on these buildings. In the assessments, the main reasons the buildings were allocated Category 3 in the local government inventory is because they are no longer residences and/or have had minor alterations. I don't think these arguments stack up. Most state heritage listed and local government Category 1 and 2 buildings across the state have all been altered in some way. Like, really, none of them are in complete original condition. running water and taps, inside toilets, modern kitchens, laundries, air conditioning and electricity are examples of modifications. The Midland Courthouse is no longer a courthouse, but it's state heritage listed. There's multiple examples like this. In 2015, I emailed the city to ask about the heritage value of and whether the city intended to retain several properties in Midland. One of the properties was Lot 1, number 27 Junction Parade, which is formerly number 7 The Avenue. At that time, I was advised by email the city did not own that property and therefore could not speak on the owner's behalf or about their intentions. Well, the city is the owner of that property now, and residents want to know and have a right to know what the city, as the owner, intends to do with this property and all the other properties contained in this motion. The city is proposing to introduce a new executive position around place stakeholder engagement. The intention of the position is to lift public trust, counter misinformation, negative media and politics, and improve customer experience. I have no problem with the creation of this position whatsoever. However, I can see a strong and kind of disturbingly ironic correlation between the creation of this position and the city meeting behind closed doors to discuss divesting ownership of these properties. In 2020, the city surveyed the community about what is important to people and asked them to rank them in order of most important and least important. Information from the survey has been fed into the 2021 draft Midland Local Area Plan, which is still to be adopted by Council. The result of the survey identified the number one priority to the community is to promote and protect Midland's heritage. And yet here we are again, begging the city to do what the community wants and expects. That is, to protect and preserve Midland's heritage.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
The officer's comment regarding this motion states, a decision by Council to retain the heritage buildings will have implications for the implementation of the new junction project. Previously, at every turn, city officers have advised the community the Midland Oval Redevelopment Master Plan can be altered and tweaked. That is what the community wants. They want these buildings incorporated into the new junction precinct. The vision for the new junction is to create an iconic, vibrant and diverse destination for Midland, supporting residential and commercial intensification and economic growth. The community will not think Midland is an iconic, vibrant and diverse destination if the city fails to protect these buildings and then sells them for probable demolition. In this scenario, the mature Queensland box trees on the verges will suffer the same fate. If the city, as the owner of these buildings, is not prepared to set a positive example, how can we possibly expect private landowners to invest in preserving heritage buildings in Midland?
How long have you got to go? Thanks, Ms. Ovens.
All I was going to say is that Councillor Prodovnik is running a petition at the moment that will be presented to Council next week, and I'm asking councillors to support that motion, and thank you for listening to me tonight.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No questions. I thank you for your deputation, and speaking on the same item is Mr Patrick Irwin.
I think he's gone.
Excuse me, but Patrick had a prior commitment, and so he will not be able to speak on this item or the following item for which he's scheduled.
Thank you very much for that information. That takes us to item C 1.8, Councillor McCulloch's motion on Women's Wellness Session. It's on page 971, and we have an in-person deputation from Ms Tracy Cave. Thank you, Tracy. You'll have 5 minutes from when you start speaking.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Tracy Cave. I am the founder and CEO of a local community organisation called Sister Project. We are based in Ellenbrook, but we serve the wider community. We have been set up our organisation to support and empower migrant and refugee women and their families to integrate into the community and be able to make the best possible future for themselves and their families. Tonight I'm going to speak on behalf of my local community members who are currently not able to access our swimming pools or our leisure centres. I understand this motion has been put to the Council previously and was shut down for a number of reasons. I would like to address those reasons tonight. Before we start talking about why we are intentionally excluding people, let's talk about some numbers. Who exactly are we currently keeping out of our pool and gyms? And how many City of Swan residents are we currently excluding from City of Swan facilities? For this exercise, to play it safe, perhaps we could think in approximate percentages, but conservative approximate percentages. As we are all aware, the City of Swan is one of the fastest growing areas in the state, according to the My School website, which shows the most up-to-date data for families attending schools. Approximately 30% of our local population was born overseas and currently speak a language other than English at home. Let's then assume that half of those people born overseas are female. So we start with 15%. 15% of those overseas born females, some of them are from cultures where female modesty is something that is heavily regulated through the way they dress, what they can and can't do. Regulation is maintained through religious or cultural teaching, family, community pressure and expectation. Let's also conservatively guess that the children of these adult women are also raised in a similar fashion, although they were born and raised in Australia. Let's add 5% to that. Perhaps your mind has immediately jumped to Muslim women. Why not? They are the most visible, easily spotted group of people who dress the most modestly and who are often the ones who bear the brunt of our discussions about what women should or shouldn't be able to do and what they can and can't wear. But let's not forget Christian women from backgrounds from many African countries, Polynesian, our own Indigenous communities, Micronesian and Melanesian, who now live amongst us. Or the Buddhist women from Asian countries such as Thailand, Indonesia, Myanmar, who also live here and believe that women are to dress and behave in a certain way in the presence of men. Now let's add to that figure, seeing as we are talking about a community facility that is there for everyone, let's also talk about our non-migrant community members, who we are also stopping from coming into our pools and our leisure centres. As a family and domestic violence survivor, I remember that very turbulent time. Living in a family and domestic violent household is one of the biggest killers of women in our country. Before getting to the point of leaving, many women are heavily controlled by their husbands as to where they go, who they are with, how they are dressed, and what they do. Leaving that household has been shown to be the most dangerous time for women in FTV situations. I remember personally the whole body anxiety and fear of being in any public space, bumping into or being spotted by my ex-husband. The constant scanning, the rushing in and out of places, the hiding, the exhausting calculating of escape routes. Everywhere I went, the constant monitoring of my kids, were they safe, who were they with, did they have an escape plan? This behaviour goes for months, even years. Sometimes it is something that women have to do for the rest of their life to keep themselves safe. Being able to exercise in an open public area that a husband is also entitled to enter was and definitely is something that I, amongst many other women, were not or are not able to do. 1 in 5 of the call-outs that our police officers currently attend to are reported family violence situations. This is not counting unreported FTV situations, just the reported ones. Chatting with our local detective sergeant this morning, he believes they are just scratching the surface of the number of women in our community who are currently living in an FTV violent household. But still, we are keeping our numbers conservative, so let's just add on another 5% of our local community who, for safety reasons, are not able to attend our local pool and gyms. So now we're back up to 25%. Let's consider our teenagers, their mental health, body image. I have 3 teenage girls. I have seen the distorted images of women photoshopped in Insta and other social media platforms that my girls compared their bodies to. Body image is one of the leading issues for our young women, affecting their self-esteem, confidence, mental health. I've also been a youth worker in my time. You may also think of people you know who have perhaps, like myself, thoroughly enjoyed their winter food, perhaps a bit too much. can't find the time or the willpower to exercise, or maybe their body shows physical effort it took to carry a baby or babies. Perhaps you can think of someone in your network of friends who have gone through health issues. Even just aging can make you think that you don't want to unclothe yourself in public. So let's say, for conservative reasons, we add on another 5% of our population who, for whatever reason, may have poor body image, not feel comfortable to unclothe in public. So now we're back up to 30% of our community not comfortable or able to use a public facility. Now, let's consider, if you will, the reasons currently put forward by the City of Swan Council previously did not want to approve making the swimming pool and leisure centres more acceptable for its
Can
community
I ask you,
members.
Tracy, how long you've got to go?
I have got, I'd say, about one and a half minutes left.
Okay, you've had 6 minutes already, but please continue.
Thank you for your time. Exclusivity has been a concern that has been raised in the past, and I would like to address that now. There has been a concern that by having 1 or 2 hours a week women-only time in pools excludes others in the community to enjoy the pool and gym, even if it is just for that 1 or 2 hours. Who are these others that could potentially be excluded? Well, they're not women, they're men. Of course, we do not want to exclude anyone. So we ask, are they permanently excluded? No, they're not. They're excluded just for 1 hour or 2 hours a week. There's still plenty of hours in the week where they can attend this facility. Sometimes to make things more equal amongst people, we need to focus on how to make it more equitable. A wonderful thing about living in Australia today is that we try and include as many people as possible in being able to access opportunities and community life. I'm old enough to remember when women were not allowed in the local pub. Go to an old small town and you may find a sign saying female only waiting room. Look through some old Australian photos from my parents' era and you may see a sign at a movie theatre, blacks enter here. Things change. We improve. Looking back, we can't believe how they got away with this segregation. People with disabilities, they've always existed. Yet do you remember a time when there were no ramps in the pool to help people in wheelchairs get down into the water? When there were just steps to climb on up. Doors were not even wide enough to allow them into the building. There were not bumps in the footpath at road edges to warn sight-impaired people of the impending road. And yet now we try to include everyone. Woolworths even has regular shopping time now where they dim the lights, soften the music for autistic people. We are improving. For the sake of being able to include everyone, sometimes each of us needs to make little adjustments. With the benefit of hindsight, we are able to look back and learn how to be more inclusive by making changes and adjustments. The City of Cannington, amongst other cities, have already made some changes to be able to include all their community members in enjoying their local swimming leisure facilities, similar to what we are suggesting this evening with this motion. In the future, we have a chance to look back at our decision making. I'm hoping we'll have the opportunity to be proud of the decision we make. Revenue is another objection that's been previously raised, and in regards to revenue, I know the city does not provide facilities with the sole intention of gaining revenue, but it does need to be factored in. What a perfect opportunity to currently tap into an untapped 30% of our population to gain more revenue. If the media interest from last time this matter was raised is anything to go by, there'll be plenty of media coverage that will show how the City of Swan is moving ahead, being inclusive and finding best possible solutions, facilities and services in its ever-changing population. Thank you for the extended time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Howland.
Thank you, Tracy. Have you, as a sister project, thought about sort of session times and timetables? Have you sort of gone that
Not
far?
for the city's facilities. We currently do running swimming lessons for women, but we go to the City of Wanneroo to do that.
And my other question was, so do you know if, so obviously, I think you might have answered that, women involved in the sister project would currently access services at another city,
That's
and that
correct.
would be City of Wanneroo?
With City of Wanneroo, we have been very generously donated a bus to use to transport women to weekly swimming lessons.
Okay, and you think that they would if we applied it in the city of Swan?
100%. And I've actually got a quota of only 15 ladies able to do it a week, but I've got a waiting list of ladies wanting to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. What hours do you go to Wanneroo, and which centre do you use? Thank you.
We go on Fridays. We have our fitness day on Fridays where we have Zumba and yoga, and then we go to swimming lessons. Swimming lessons start from 11:30, go to 12:30. And the name of the swimming pool just escapes my mind because I have to look it up each and every time. Nope. I can tell you it's over there. I don't drive the bus, so I'm not too worried about the actual name of the place.
And you mentioned the City of Canning, but their program purely for females operates outside their normal trading hours. Would you be happy if that was accommodated?
Ideally, we would be wanting to cater for women that do go to work and those that don't go to work. So if it's possible, it's something that could be considered. I don't know if you do studies of this before you start putting things in place. There are a lot of ladies that work from home to earn their money, or they're studying English and so forth. So something during the daytime would be brilliant, but also something in the evening for all those that do work. I mean, we're talking about doctors and nurses and a substantial amount of community service providers in our community would benefit from this.
Thank you. Councillor Kiley.
Through you, Mayor, I'm interested in the amount of women in the community who are possibly born overseas who don't have the opportunity, as you, for various reasons, don't have the opportunity to learn how to swim, and therefore, when they're renting a property that may have a swimming pool, that may not have that opportunity to teach their children to swim. So, are we? How many mothers are effectively not teaching their children to swim and therefore putting them at risk?
You've raised a very important issue, and if I could talk for half an hour, I would definitely take this opportunity and raise a lot of issues like you're doing right now. We are putting a lot of families in jeopardy. It's usually the women that are raising children are in charge of the home. They are the ones that take them to the swimming pool. They themselves can't swim, but their kids jump in the water. So we are putting people at risk by not allowing this. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks very much for the information that you provided for us. The last council motion that you were talking about that discussed the controversial decision, it was based on the fact of a whole day. It wasn't knocking back any women's sessions. So this will be a new motion that will come and hopefully be successful. But I'm interested in children's swimming lessons currently. So when it comes to primary school swimming lessons at the moment, what's the current situation with these families? Are the children participating, both female and male junior primary students? Are they currently doing their swimming lessons that are allocated through the schools?
That's something obviously I can't comment on because I would have to get figures from the Department of Education, which I don't have. I think the situation arises when children reach puberty, especially when they're no longer able to be swimming alongside or in close proximity of the opposite gender. They can do swimming lessons when they're in primary school if that's something that the family is supporting. What you're suggesting, I'm thinking, Councillor, is that they should be fined because they're getting swimming lessons
No, I
at
never,
school.
never suggested that. I was curious to know at this stage what percentage of children are proactively doing the curriculum swimming in junior primary school at this stage. There was no suggestion whatsoever to say that they would continue on there or that there aren't different rules. It was definitely asking, are those children participating in the curriculum at the moment?
Most likely, Department of Education would be the best place to go to get those figures. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
We'll now move to the next item, which is C1.9 regarding the Lloyd Street Bridge, and I've had a request that a number of councillors haven't seen the proposed motion of Councillor Catalano. Mr CEO, do we have it on the board, or can we get it up on the board so we actually know what the motion is? Because it's not in the agenda. Have we got a copy of it? And perhaps we can ask Megan to type it up. But while Megan is putting it up there, because of the time, and we've got 3 in-person deputations, or in fact we've got 2 on this now. Mr Irwin's not available. I'll call the first speaker, Miss Leah Bowden, President of Woodbridge Ratepayers Association. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, sorry, point of order, and before anyone jumps on me, 1.4 in the meeting procedure local law states that it does include gender forums. Under 2.62, to actually accept these 2 deputations, it needs a vote of council.
I'll just get some advice from our governance officer. And if you could just remind me of 2.62, Councillor Bowman, while I reach for my...
Through you, Mr Mayor, just put my glasses on and I'll go to it. So 2.6, deputations. Point 2, deputations with respect to late items or urgent business which are not available to the public at the time of the agenda forum may be provided at the ordinary meeting of council. So obviously that's the local law. We can go against that, but that needs a motion. Mr Mayor, again, part of my point of order, so I could let everyone know, if you go to 1.4 of the meeting procedure local laws, application, all meetings, agenda forums and briefing sessions have been conducted in accordance with the Local Government Act, the regulations and this local law.
Miss Albrecht, can you give me some advice? Thank you. Just hang on, we'll just get one point dealt with at a time.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the meeting procedures local law does apply to the agenda forum. The clause referenced by Councillor Bowman states that late items, the deputations for late items can be heard at the council meeting. Given that we've got people here tonight to make deputations on this item, I believe it would be appropriate for the council to move a motion to vote to allow them to be heard tonight.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for a motion from the floor. A question, Councillor Catalano.
Thank you. My item was actually put into staff many weeks ago, and in fact wasn't a late item. I mean, it was because I was getting a lot of what the question I'm saying is, you see, it wasn't a late item because I had it in many weeks ago. So, you know, I think this is not your normal late item. In fact, I wasn't late at all. So I want you to confirm that, if you can, please.
Well, I think you just hang on, Councillor Catalano. I'm going to make a ruling. Thank you. I'm aware that you intended and advised staff some 2 weeks ago that you'd be putting in a notice of motion on this item, but you've been working with staff to get the correct wording, and that's part of the reason why it wasn't in the agenda. And I'm happy to take a motion from the floor so we can hear from the two people here tonight to give a deputation if someone so moves. So you're moving that we hear the 2 deputations, second by Councillor Johnson. Is there anyone against? You wish to debate it, Councillor Kiley?
Well, yes, I do. I think we're setting an unreasonable precedent when clearly the item's been put in before staff a number of weeks ago, and I don't think we need to have a motion each time there's...
CEO wants to make a point of clarification.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I mean, Councillor Catalano has been talking with staff for well over 2 weeks now in relation to the notice of motion. The staff and Councillor Catalano have been discussing the wording of that notice of motion. Unfortunately, that wasn't clarified until late on Friday, and therefore the notice of motion is not late in terms of it being for this, it's just late in terms of the content. So from a practical point of view, just clarifying it from a technicality that Councillor Bowman's raised is, as the Mayor's done, is get a motion from Council and it can be included tonight. So it's quite straightforward.
I've got a mover and a seconder. I'll ask, is there anyone against? Being no one against, I declare that carried. Thank you, Ms Bowden. You have 5 minutes to make your deputation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors and staff. I'm Lee Borden, President of the Woodbridge Ratepayers Association, and I speak in favour of the motion. It's not until one visits the Lower Helena catchment area, the site of the proposed bridge, that it can be understood fully the tremendous impact the proposed Batter Bridge concept will have upon the site. Councillors, even if the Helena River catchment does not fall within your ward, your vote carries across all of the City of Swan wards. The Lord Street Bridge is an issue that will affect all of the community into the future. As a ratepayer, I consider you are duty-bound as our responsible representatives to make your decision based upon solid understanding of the issues, and for that I ask respectfully that you do two things before casting your vote at Council. One, visit the site if you haven't already, and I thank those who have. And two, support Councillor Catalano's motion. Without visiting the site, you'll be making a decision on the 15th of December as if blindfolded. Please do not just rely upon, I think I'm going to sneeze. Please do not rely upon information provided to you. It may be selective. At the recent agenda and council meeting, there was an admittance that the information provided to councillors was, if I may paraphrase, scant. Whilst a briefing session is now behind you, I contend even so, a visit to the site is essential. It's an essential element to making your decision. I urge you, please take the time to wander down the dirt decline past the Aboriginal rock shelter, glance across at the hundreds of large mature trees nestled amongst the soft grasses and notice the fresh water billabong. You may not see the turtles, quenda, dragonflies, little kingfishers or black cockatoos. However, it is their habitat. You may even take in the restful ambience and beauty of this ancient wetland, thought protected by a conservation category wetland within a Parks and Recreation Reserve. A Batter design renders the classifications meaningless. Is this going to be a precedent? You may even reflect upon the city's own biodiversity statements and see if obliterating the site complies. Not supporting Councillor Catalano's motion will mean chainsaws amputating 118 trees from the site, bulldozers flattening and clearing about 30,000 square metres, or just under 2 footy fields, along with great volumes of dirt being tracked in, hiding the rock shelter from view, covering the billabong, all to create the massive earthen batters to support the bridge, all unnecessary, wasteful actions. An alternative design will not cause such devastation. Ask of your CEO to obtain from Main Roads their drawings and request you see them along with a qualified explanation as to modelled prediction in respect of how the clay base is expected to behave under load during wet periods.
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
I'm nearly finished. Pushing the Batter concept through without salient information puts the city's finances at risk, much derived from your ratepayers. Will you be secure in your decision? Main Roads and the consultants must explain potential sinkage. Are you willing for the city to take on the potential financial risk of an untested Batter Bridge? Foreseeability, a legal principle, must be considered concerning risk. You should expect of your CEO to see steps are taken to mitigate this risk. Consider, please, Councillor Johnson's FOI result revealed in this place, 17/11/21, that main roads had at that time no engineering drawings, thus no costing schedules. If I'm correct, then the project remains at concept stage. Has all been revealed to you. The prudent, responsible and reasonable course is for you to vote for Councillor Catalano's motion and allow the requisite time for the City to inform you fully and provide time for a better design that fits environmental, cultural and your City's own biodiversity pronouncements and policy criterion. I do not stand against a bridge, just its current wretched concept, batter concept. As a ratepayer, I urge you to support the 8th of December 2021 motion of Councillor Catalano's. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Thank you for your deputation. I call to the microphone Mr Robert Ilchick, Treasurer of the Lower Helena Association. Thank you, Mr Ilchick.
You got it right?
You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Council, for your attention. It's becoming quite clear that what happens to the Helena River, Mandun Bilra, is a concern for many locals. This was demonstrated at last week's rally, where over 250 people gathered to show their support for a more environmentally and culturally friendly design for the Lloyd Street Bridge. One supporter stated, "I am local to the area and I think the bridge is a good idea, but not at the expense of reducing or disturbing these wetlands." This is a common sentiment. The project area is within the Guildford Complex, part of the Swan Canning River Park. The city's very own local biodiversity strategy, 2016, states all remaining remnant vegetation mapped as Guildford Complex will be retained. This particular area happens to be classed as the top priority for protection within that complex in that report. And I'd just like to point out that in the clearing survey that was done, if one searches that, there is not the word turtle or tortoise never appears. So I think that that survey is a little bit undercooked. The City of Swan is about to release a reconciliation plan. The city will never be taken seriously in their desire to reconcile with the traditional owners if it allows this project to go ahead. The city is fully aware that the bridge will result in a complete defacing of a place sacred to the Noongar people, cognizant that the TOs did not want a bridge at this location and that they did not consider this design as being in line with their beliefs. Please do not think that having a Section 18 in place will absolve this project from any wrongdoing. As we have seen up north recently, things can go desperately wrong. I also understand that the construction costs for the bridge are not yet constrained and that currently there are no final engineering designs to allow for such costings. We don't think the taxpayers would be thrilled to know that Main Roads has a blank check with no blueprint when they start clearing. Again, how much financial and reputational risk is the City of Swan willing to carry? Now I'd like to dispel an alternative fact. At the last meeting, it was stated that the City of Swan has no scope for asking Main Roads for a redesign because the project is not a city project. This has been contradicted by a recent correspondence to the Lower Helena Association from Main Roads, where it clearly states that the bridge is a city project. Therefore, the City of Swan, the project owner, has the authority to improve the design. Councillors, you may not be aware that Main Road's public FYI events and online surveys were not specific to the Lloyd Street Bridge. They encompassed the entire Great Eastern Highway Bypass project. The broader Main Road's online survey attracted 146 submissions. The Save the Helena Rally Wetlands Rally held last week attracted over 250 people in person who made their way to the event. Main Roads interceded about 700 people at their two public FYI events. Our Facebook page interactions surpass this number, and they are all in support of a redesign. We have also collected, and now it said 400 when I wrote this earlier today, it's now 500 signatures from citizens requesting a better design, and more are coming. The feedback from the community is clear. We want a more sustainable, lower impact bridge. Please. Mayor Lucas, at a recent Smart Cities conference, you're quoted as saying that such cities could only promote economic growth when the outcome was beneficial for both community and the environment. Councillors, I urge you to listen to the words of our mayor and support the motion of Councillor Catalano. A better bridge will better serve both the environment and the public. It makes sense. It will be consistent with the community's expectations and City of Swan's policies and aspirations, and will better serve the community into the future. Let's make Midland a smart city. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Kiley.
How did you get that so right?
We've been thinking about this day and night.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Henderson?
Thank you. I think you said there were more than 250 people at the meeting on Saturday, was it, or Sunday?
Yes, Saturday.
Did you have a record of the people that attended?
We had a petition that was there. Not everyone was able to sign it, but we got 191 signatures on the petition that day.
Yeah, thanks, because I couldn't count 250, so thank you.
Yeah. No, people were coming and going during the time, so there were never 250 there at one time, but I think we're easily had that number.
Thank you. Any other questions? Then I thank you for your deputation, and you'll note that there are 3 further written deputations on that item from Graham Lindsay and Marie and Steve Denny and a Cameron Mart.
In addition to the one that had to leave that was going to do a verbal.
Yeah, well, these were written deputations. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, councillors, that takes us to item 6.2, councillor questions in regard to any other items on the agenda. Any questions you'd like to ask the staff? On the confidential item, councillor, well, I want to deal with other items before we go behind closed doors. So I plan to go, Councillor Henderson, you have a question?
Yes, on 3.3, the security patrols, I couldn't find a number of residents for the Vines to be able to work out a percentage against return. How many residents in the Vines?
Mr Bishop.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, could I just have the question repeated? Was it the number of residents that were surveyed in the Vines?
Yeah.
I don't have the exact figure, but Councillor Bowman asked the same question a couple of days ago. I think it was about 2,000 something. I don't know if you have the answer before him.
Councillor Bowman, if you can assist.
Through you, Mr Mayor, rateable properties in the Vines are 2192.
You finished, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure if I bring it up now, but I'd like to withdraw 5.7, a motion 5.7.
Okay, I'm going to now go through the matrix sheet and... Yes. Before we start... No, that's fine. What item and which staff member?
Yes, it was about the policy review, risk management, 2.1. And I was just interested to know, on page 40, the approach now taken by the city is to centralise the management of strategic and enterprise risks in order to ensure. And is that's going to be different to what you've currently got, the system you've currently got with the managing risks, is it? Because, yeah, okay, I'll let you answer that.
Thank you, Ms Albrecht.
Through you, Mr Mayor, strategic risk has always been managed or centrally managed, but operational risk is managed at our business unit level.
Oh, is that what the difference was? Okay. All right then. Okay, so it's actually not a change. No. Okay then. And then also wanted to ask you about getting on to the complaints management. Do you deal with that? Complaints management, that's 2.3.
Complaints management.
Yeah, that's what it says. Policy review.
Place management or
complaints.
Okay, that's in the confidential item, so we'll wait till we go behind.
No, it's actually in the non-confidential. Oh, no, this wasn't about... I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about the actual policy review.
Okay, what's your question?
Okay. So, just wanted to know if the list comes to council annually. Is that part of the policy? I couldn't actually see it in the policy.
So, through you, Mr Mayor, are you referring to the list of people who are on the unreasonable conduct?
Yes, that's right. Yes, and that does the list. The question is, does the list come to council annually under this policy?
Yes.
Okay, and I couldn't see it in there. Can you give me the number where it actually says that? I was reading through it and I was like trying to figure out where it says it.
It comes to council annually because council has requested it.
Yeah, I know, but is it in the policy? Is it in the policy?
No, I don't believe that is in the policy.
It's not in the policy. Was it in the policy before?
No.
So, just wanted to know how we can be sure that it's going to come back to council in the future, that list.
It could be added to the policy if you would like it.
Okay, well, I'll do a withdrawal on that one then, thank you. That's pretty much... Yes, thank you. That's pretty much all the questions I have. Thank you.
Have you got a question, Councillor Henderson, or do you want to withdraw an item?
No, just another question on 2.1. The certification to ISO 31000. Do we actually go through an accreditation process, or do we work to the actual policy under ISO 31000?
Ms Albrecht.
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, we do not go through an accreditation process. We simply work to the standard.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
If there's no further questions, councillors, I intend to work through the matrix, and please advise me if you wish to withdraw an item. So, item 13.8, Banana Road upgrade. Councillor Catalano, do you know what you want to do?
I think there's already a motion and
I'm unaware of that. But item 2.1, policy review, risk management. Item 2.2, policy review, fraud and corruption. Item 2.3, policy review, complaint management.
Yes, I've already indicated
Yes.
that I'm going to do an amendment to that.
Thank you. Well, perhaps if you work with Councillor Catalano and staff. Item 3.1, Bellevue East Land Use Study Review. Item 3.2, Midland Sports Complex Review of Operating Model. I see Councillor Bowman's done that, but Councillor Howard, if you speak to Councillor Bowman so you can work together on that, thank you. Item 3.3, Allenbrook and the Vines Community Survey Patrol. Councillor Bowman's withdrawn that item. Do you know what you want to do, Councillor Bowman? Is it an alternative or a refusal? Or
It's a minor change.
Minor, thank you. Well, have a discuss with Councillor Bowman. Item 3.4, Swan Community Funding Scheme. Item 3.5, Reconciliation Action Plan. Councillor Henderson. Thank you. Item 4.1, consideration of submissions for the reclassification of Diana Crescent and Kerwin Way for special use. Councillor Kiley and Councillor Catalano. Item 4.2, consideration amendment to 198 local planning scheme number 17 for rezoning 14 properties in Hazelmere and general industrial area. Thank you. If you can let the staff know as soon as possible, we'll work with them. Item 4.3, proposed amendment of Bravham Activity Structure Plan. Item 4.4, the RA report on Crocker Drive, Malaga for a warehouse development. Item 4.5, RA report on refurbishment of Landgate building in Midland. Item 4.6, the RA report for Denning Up Way, Malaga industrial development. Item 4.7, a SAT reconsideration of land and gym and a veterinary centre in Bernard Road, Caversham. Councillor Bowman. You've got an alternative motion, Councillor Bowman. Thank you. 4.8, proposed temporary estate signage in Orange Avenue, Upper Swan. Councillor Bowman again. Thank you. Well, perhaps if you talk to Councillor Bowman, see what he's planning, you might be able to enhance each other's motions. 4.9, the third-party signage, Apple Street, Great Northern Highway, Upper Swan. Councillor Bowman has withdrawn that, and if you wish to work together on that one as well.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, so that Councillor Kiley, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Bowman?
Okay, well, I've only got one listed here, so...
Councillor Kiley, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Bowman.
Right, well, my understanding, Councillor Henderson would take precedent as the ward member, so perhaps if you all talk with Councillor Henderson and come to some hopefully mutual agreement. Item 4.10, existing overwidth driveway, Travagliata Crescent, The Vines. Item 4.11, proposed telecommunications facility, Great Northern Highway, Middle Swan. Item 4.12, proposed dwelling, Eckert Up Way. Well, that one's been withdrawn from the agenda, councillors. Item 4.13, proposed modification of development approval for aged care facility, Swan Street, East Guildford. 4.14, use of land for place of worship and associated buildings and Great Northern Highway, Upper Swan. Councillor Knight. Do you know what you wish to do, Councillor Knight?
I'd just like to put an amendment in the plan.
Thank you. If you can work with the planning staff, that'd be
Okay.
much appreciated. Item 4.15, proposed single house, Aqualate Avenue in Aveley. 4.16, statutory planning decisions under delegated authority. 5.1, temporary closure of portion of Beachborough Road North, Whiteman. Councillor Congdon. Alternative motion, thank you. You work with staff. Item 5.2, proposed temporary closure of portions of Drumpilia Drive, Whiteman. Oh, you don't have to tell me that till next week. 5.3, indefinite temporary road closure application, Railway Parade, Upper Swan. Okay, so I've got Councillor Zanino first, so he's the ward member. Councillor Kiley, and I saw another hand go up, Councillor Johnson. Perhaps if you can all correspond with each other. I don't know if you're thinking the same things or different things. Item 5.4, Midlands Men's Shed Workshop. Councillor Howlett. You know what you wish to do, Councillor Howlett? Thank you. 5.5, Parking Provisions, Mulgall Road, Malaga. 5.6, Woodbridge Creek Footbridge Replacement. Councillor Howlett and Councillor Johnson. Thank you. 5.7, Proposed Works, Kinmeadow, Foreshore and Guildford. Councillor Knight. Thank you. And Councillor Kiley. Do you know what either one of you would like to do?
Yeah, I'd like to withdraw the motion.
Sorry, did you say withdraw?
I'm going to discuss with staff.
Perhaps if you can both correspond with each other in conjunction with the staff. 6.1, List of Accounts Paid, October 2021. 6.2, Financial Management Reports for period ended 31st of October 2021. Item 6.3, Budget Adjustments 2021 to 22, December 21. 6.4, Change in Basis of Valuation. 7.1, Consider of Tender, Provision of Internal Audit Services. 7.2, Consolidated Amendment, Local Law of Shopping Trolleys. Sorry?
7.2.
Okay. I'll look at that. Item 7.3, Adoption of the 2021 Annual Report and Setting of Annual Meeting of Electors Date. Which takes us then to C 1.1. These are notices of motions. Installation of sporting, lighting, toilet facilities, Ellenbrook Oval Secondary College. C 1.2, Bells Lookout, Brigadoon. Do any councillors want to withdraw the notices of motion, any of the notices of motion, just in the interest of making up a few minutes? No, which then takes us to confidential items. So I'm looking for a motion. Will we go behind closed door? Move Councillor Parry. Is that seconded by you, Councillor Catalano?